What's going on, guys, and welcome to November's episode of Game of the Month, the show where we pick a game at random every month, and at the end of the month, we talk about it like a book club. My name's Seth, and joining me today is Chevy, on my left, your right, and a very special guest, someone who hasn't been around for a little bit. We got Josh joining us today as well to talk about God of War Ragnarok. We all played it. We all beat it. So this will be a full spoiler discussion. Hopefully I put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode like I planned on, telling you that we will be going through full spoilers. So if you do not want to hear that, play the game, beat the game, or watch on YouTube, come back, join us for this conversation. Josh, how you doing?
Not too bad. Just been working and playing video games, and that's about it. So
You played through and beat Ragnarok, and are you excited to have this conversation with us?
yeah. I may have a little different of opinion than most people, but yeah, I am pretty excited.
I'm very excited to find out what that different opinion is then, because I feel like most people are going to have the same opinions on this game. So, yeah.
I guess we'll get into it when we get into it.
We'll figure it out. Chevy, how you doing?
Doing good. As I told you off camera, my caffeine is wearing off, so I'm going through that right now. But otherwise, I'm doing pretty good.
It's gonna be a sweepy episode. Yeah, I got a headache going on, so this is just doomed from the start. So hopefully it evens out, and hopefully Josh's view on God of War isn't doesn't bring Ragnarok in real life to all of us. All right, so we'll be discussing that in a sec and going through everything on that. Glad to see you guys are doing well, and we got to pick a brand new game for December. If you guys remember, it was like 2 months ago because we did the community pick game of the month, and then I just pulled rank and picked God of War for this month. We haven't done a randomly picked game of the month in a while, so we are going to do that for December. Good old traditional random game of the month. So as you can see on the screen, we have a wheel of all the games that we have on our back burner list, and we take them off. We add them as time goes on. I'm going to click this. It's going to find the game of the month for us, and then we're going to play in December. So hopefully it's something reasonable, because I got Callisto Protocol to play at some point. Very excited for that. Also, it's going to be a busy month in December because we got to do our Game of the Year discussion in December.
Yes.
And we got to react to the Game Awards soon, too.
Yep.
So a lot of shit is coming up. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Game of the Month. So let's find out what our Game of the Month for December is in 3, 2, 1, and go. All right, the wheel is spinning, Josh. I swear it is. It is slowing down. It is slowing down to Code Vein, I think.
Yep.
All right. Very interesting. I forgot we even had that on the list. That'd be easy. So Code Vein will be our game of the month for December. Josh, did you ever play Code Vein?
Never have. I never even bought it, to be honest.
Do you have any interest in it?
Somewhat, but I think there's just other stuff to play when that game came out, and it just never kind of got back on my radar.
It was never, even from my perspective, before I had played it, it was never like a must-play game. It was just like there, and eventually I was like, yeah, I'm going to give it a try, because I like Dark Souls-style games and anime, so that's pretty much what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I watched you play it a little bit, and it looked cool. It was just one of those games that just kind of was like, oh, that's neat, and then just kind of exited my brain real quick.
Mm-hmm. Chevy, what do you think about Code Vein being game of the month?
I'm interested in playing it. We played it a little bit, I think, right? That one?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, me and you played co-op quite a bit. I think
that
we're probably close to beating it.
Is that on console?
Yeah.
Okay. Similarly, I enjoy, to an extent, Soulsborne games. I have a hard time playing a lot of them unless they have co-op. Unfortunately, that is becoming more and more common. I don't play games for difficulty, though, so I kind of just need it to be something I can play with people and, be able to have that kind of like exploration experience with someone.
Mm-hmm.
This game offers that, though it has the very traditional Soulsborne formula, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So
yeah,
it's fun. I remember it being hard compared to a lot of other of the games that kind of were like coming out around the time this was coming out, as far as like Soulsborne style games were going. Specifically, like the boss fights were pretty brutal. So
I don't remember that, but it's been a while since we played. I just remember that we enjoyed it when we did play it. That'll be a spoiler a little bit, but we've talked about it on the channel before. And if you would have asked me if I would be playing Code Vein in December, like any time this year, I no, that would not have been on my radar. But for that reason, I'm actually kind of interested in playing this because it's not been on my radar. I've not been thinking about this game. But when we did play it, we were having fun with it. So it'll be fun to return to it, play it. Maybe we can beat it because we played it quite a bit when we did play it, and give it a full review because I don't think we have reviewed it. I don't think it's been on PlayStation Plus or anything.
I'm trying to figure out how we even played it in the first place.
So Code Vein had that really weird co-op system too, right?
It had the very Souls, like, you know,
staggered,
you beat a boss, you get kicked.
stilted.
You start a mission and you have to invite somebody in, but once you finish the mission, you can't do it again, so they have to start the mission and invite you in. And so like you essentially have to play every mission twice. So if you want to think about it optimistically, it's grind. It at least allows you to grind a little bit. So, but it is a pretty archaic system. It's not the best thing ever, but it is doable. So you can definitely play co-op in it because we did. But yeah, so Code Vein will be our game of the month in December, and yeah, very interesting. But even more interesting than that, we played God of War Ragnarok, and we all finished it, which I'm very happy about. I just finished it like a day ago. Yesterday, I did it. So, and you guys did it pretty recently as well. Before we jump into our impressions, in case you didn't get a chance to play God of War Ragnarok, and this is a spoiler discussion we'll be having, but I'm not going to go over every beat of this game. Hopefully you've played through it as well if you're here for this. God of War Ragnarok is the continuation of the 2018 new iteration of God of War. It is continuing the story of Kratos and Atreus, moving past things that were done in the last game, the consequences of those. And the game deals with fate, trust, a lot of diplomacy, which is interesting, and or at least ideas of diplomacy, and essentially questioning fate as all the characters move towards a giant war between all 9 realms, Ragnarok, and taking on Asgard. Features a huge cast of characters, a lot of locations. You go to all 9 realms. It is a third-person action game with leveling up, gear, puzzles, exploration, a lot of stuff, combos. It's a very combo heavy combat game, kind of similar to Dark Souls in the sense that you can kind of like lock on and dodge around, but not as well because of the combo system and how intricate it is. I was gonna say it's similar to Godfall, but Godfall was copying God of War, so that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, what else am I missing here? It's a very cinematic game, big story.
Yeah, big time.
Huge story, a lot of things going on. And a couple things they've added. They've expanded the companion system in the last game. You had Atreus hanging out with you, and he was kind of like, almost like gear you were leveling up. You used him. In this, not only do you get to play as him, which was an interesting surprise we'll talk about, I'm sure. You now get Freya as a companion. When he plays Atreus, you get a sword as a companion, which is very interesting. You take Brock with you at one point. Sindri. It really explores that system even further. We'll talk about that. But this whole game in a nutshell seems like it explored everything they touched on in the last game in a big way. We all played it, and since this is your first time back in a while, Josh, how about we start with your impressions of God of War? Let us know what you thought of, what were the pros, what were the cons, what were the things you liked, what things you didn't like, and I'm dying to know where you stand when it comes to preemptively letting us know your impressions might be different than others, which I 100% welcome because I just kind of assumed everybody would agree about this game.
Yeah. So first off, like the story, the scale, all the accoutrements. We're talking like voice acting, the characters, the mocap, all that is top tier. Um, very, very PlayStation-esque when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to their exclusives. I do not have an issue with that. This game to me felt a lot more like God of War 2018 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it felt a lot like it was just like a $70 DLC, and I say that's a very crude way of saying that because
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest, it's not. But uh, it it brought the story forward more than the gameplay in the game,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I just got kind of bogged down in some of the exploration. It was cool to look at, very rewarding. Um, but every time I came around a corner and there was one of those stupid chests where you have to use Freya's sigil and then you have to hit it with the blades of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, why is this even here? Like an obstacle just in my path to waste time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of the puzzles I found absolutely boring, and right, I would be sitting there just looking at the puzzle, like, okay, well, if I do that and I do that, and then all of a sudden Freya or Atreus would just be like, maybe you can swing that into that thing and I can shoot it. And I'm like, okay,
So
just
this has kind of become a meme, and I agree with that criticism. And I guess you can turn that off. I never looked into it because I just want to play the game as it was built. But I do agree. A lot of times, I think like 75-80% of the time, when you do any puzzle, they're instantly telling you how to go about it, which could be useful for certain people, but for somebody who like wants to actually interact with the puzzle, it does take away from it. It doesn't take away too much for me just because like I want to get the puzzle done instantly, but like I just want to be done with it and move forward. And it does a good job of like if you didn't figure it out in a millisecond, they'll do it for you. But it is annoying narrative wise that every character kind of talks to you like you're a moron during those puzzles. You do something and then they tell you what to do as you do it. I'm like, yeah, just blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, I know, motherfucker. I just did it. So it is really weird, the choice that they made. And we're seeing that more and more as games evolve, that with the ability to add so much narrative as you're playing games to make them feel more alive, games like Horizon Forbidden West and now this have constant dialogue. And I think because this is kind of a new thing with how much dialogue you can have going on in situations, they're still kind of finding a balance on how to responsibly do that. And I think they didn't balance it that well when it comes to the dialogue during puzzles. I think Naughty Dog did a really good job with that back with like, Uncharted 4, pretty much all their games, but they're more modern games because they'll actually let you sit there and fuck around for a while. And then someone's like, well, what about this? And you kind of like look over there and you're like, oh, wait, hold on. But in this, they'll be like, maybe we can do this like instantly when you get there. It's like, all right, genius, fucking slow down for a second.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it also seems like it was just like they wouldn't even let you like think it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just Freya would just be like, you can chain my sigils, and then it just blows up. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Though I do think it's kind of interesting that sometimes you would use something, they're like, no, not that. So you're not wasting your time with it. Because you could sit there probably for a long time just doing that and waste your time. But they don't allow that. They let you know instantly. And I kind of appreciate that. But at the same time, for somebody who wants to sit there and like really think through it, that does rob you of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway.
I think different puzzles have different dialogues too, though, because I've run into a couple where specifically, and I just wasn't seeing it. It's something as simple as like throwing a spear into a hole, and I just didn't see the air coming out of the wall or whatever.
Yeah.
And the only thing Freya said was, Kratos, I see something. And I was like, okay, nice.
There was one puzzle. There was a puzzle where fucking it was later in the game, but it's where those there's water going through one of those wooden like structures.
Oh yeah,
and you got to freeze it. Yeah, and like I was like looking at it, and what I thought you had to do was what you had to do. I just didn't do it correctly, I guess, because I tried it. I was like, well, that's not working. Hold on. I'm like thinking about it. And then I walk out of the room and fucking Mimir's like, hold on, brother, like blah, blah, blah. Come back. Like you don't have to run away. And I was like, okay, that's not helpful. And I come back and then Freya walks up. She's like, look at this. And I was like, I look at her and she's downstairs and she's just staring up at the ceiling. I'm like, yeah, dude, I've been looking at the ceiling for a while, man. And she didn't even offer anything. I'm like, the fuck's going on? So I was going to kind of like, not to counter, I was going to say earlier, like 80%, they're so on it. They tell you instantly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't tell you shit.
Other than like maybe you miss something, right? If you're running through, you know, like you said, I do think there's a balance they need to work on. It's not like game breaking by any means, but it is kind of, if you're going to have puzzles, you got to let people, you know, work on it a little.
I think the best thing they could have done is adjust the timing. So when you approach the puzzle, they give you a little bit. And because it has some smart systems. I walked out of the room and Mimir's like, you don't got, like, bro, let's go back. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
Like he's like trying to like tell me like, you know, we can do this. And I'm like, the game's smart enough to know that I was leaving while trying to figure out the puzzle. And he's like trying to get me to go back to it. So that's cool. But like, yeah, how quickly they are to tell you how to do the puzzle. It's like, just give them like a minute or so. And if you know, if nothing's being accomplished, then activate that stuff. I just think it's a timing issue.
Yeah. And I don't want to go too long because I want Josh obviously to
for sure
keep going. But
it's going to be a long conversation.
Opposite of that, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to do dialogue to let you know something somewhere. When I was playing as Atreus and you were Thor and you go a direction that isn't the main path, Thor would bitch at you for treasure hunting. He's like, we're not here to treasure hunt. I was like, oh, there's treasure over there. So
yeah. Dude, fucking, I don't want to start this off, this whole review with like negatives, but like that reminded me of when you're in Alfheim and you're with Tyr and Atreus and you're walking around and there's like 4 different places you can go off the path to find boxes and shit. And Tyr's constantly just like, where's he going? Atreus like, well, he likes to be thorough. He's like, and he's like, well, he's just looking for treasure. Like, oh, I see. And I'm just down there like breaking shit open, just like whatever, dude. Like I'm here looking for loot. And then I do a second time, and he's like, no, Kratos, the path's this way. And Atreus like, no, he's just looking for. He's like, oh, yeah, I think I get it. And then later he's just like, oh, is he looking for treasure? He's like, yeah. And it's like, oh, and then Mimir's like, oh, he's catching on. I'm like, what did you not fucking get about this, dude? Aren't you supposed to be smart? Anyway.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next, not necessarily gripe, but criticism is, like, when you're going through those moments, because you do it in Vanaheim with Freya, you know, when you're going through the jungle when she's a falcon, like she'll perch right next to the way you're supposed to go. And I was like, okay, so that way over there has treasure there. And it was just like, it was less of like me finding it instead of me just being like, okay, I got to go check that because I know there's shit there. And it happened with that Tyr thing too. He'd just be standing next to the exit or next, you know, to the next puzzle or room. And then I'm like, okay, well, there's obviously crap down there. And it just felt kind of stilted in a way. Like, okay, you know, it just gave me no, like, it was like almost autonomy, and it didn't let me, like, I felt like I couldn't freely explore without them just being like there as like a guide. Later on it does remedy, you know, when it seems like you beat a realm or beat the story in that realm, and then it goes, hey, there's so much more to do. Specifically Vanaheim, when you go to the desert, the crater, did you do all that?
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap, this is like half the game just in this one fucking area.
Yeah, some of those zones, like I was like thinking when I was playing, I was like, you could like be here for a while, just kind of like questing in this realm. Like there's so much shit to do, and a lot of the side quests are like so massive in scale. They're not just like, oh, go in here and kick this thing's ass and leave. Like there's a couple of missions like that, but like a lot of them got like full on stories, like finding like the 2 jellyfish and getting them out. They're like independent quests, and there's like a payoff to that, and like, you know, all these things you don't have to do, but you can. Or even like in the very beginning when you let that whale free and Mimir's just bitching about how he's an asshole. Mimir, not the whale. Yeah, yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot to do in this game, and I do agree. Like with the story missions, there's a lot of guidance, a lot of movement to keep the movement forward. Even though you definitely can stray off and go grab random things, but once you get that out of the way and you can kind of like freely explore the realms, it becomes less of that.
Yeah, yeah. That it's just during those story missions, it was like, okay, I get it. You're guiding me, but you're fucking this. It was almost like a Rockstar mission. Like,
Well,
your
that's
leash
fair
is a
criticism
little
too,
tight.
because Call of Duty's always gotten that criticism in their campaigns that they're essentially someone's holding your hand and escorting you through while you shoot things. So I mean, like that's a
Yeah.
regular criticism of Call of Duty. So it's fair to put it, here for you in the story missions.
I know it seems like I'm being super negative, but
No, let's get them out because I got a lot of good things to say about the game. So
yeah, I do too. The Atreus missions, like, I know obviously like they're there as like an exposition, and for you to see, the other side without it like cutting away to like, oh, what's happening in Asgard. At the same time, every time I played as Atreus, it seemed like everything was dumbed down. Like there's that one where you go to the freezing Helheim. When before you free the dog, you're there with Thrud, and
I fucking hate
Thrud,
Thrud.
whatever her
Thrud,
name is,
it's Thrud.
and like there's that one part. It's like, oh, there's a hole here, so you go through the hole, and then it's like, oh, now you got to climb up through the roof.
Oh yeah, I know.
And then it's like, oh, there's a hole here. And he goes back to the hole. I'm like, oh my god, just. And then it's like, you should get out the mask. I'm like, dude, the way is right there. I was like, what are you talking about? And that happened with like the Thor missions too. He's like, well, where do we go next? I'm like, dude, there's only one door out of here. Where do you think we're fucking going? But the moment you walked over there, she's like, I should check the mask. And so you pull out the mask and do the whole rigmarole. And I was like, please God, just let me listen to Thor bitch as I kill shit, which playing as Atreus was okay. But it was no, like.
So is that what you mean by dumbed down? Is what you're describing, or did you mean anything other than that?
No, just that.
Okay.
Like it was like it's very like Kratos light, and like the missions are just straightforward, and like we all know what's gonna happen. So, but of course it's for the story, and I get that. Like the Ironwood thing, where you're riding the ox around with Agrabota.
Yeah.
And like I was like, okay, we rid the ox for a while, and it got longer, and then it got longer, and I'm like, please, can we just figure this out, please?
It almost sounds like a lot of your observations, the things that you weren't into, are almost a tempo thing for you.
I'll say pacing.
It's pacing, yeah.
Well, yeah, because the whole time in between those missions, you're just running around wrecking everything as Kratos.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it kind of like reins you back a bit, which I don't have a problem with, but I was just like, let's get back to Kratos, because I enjoyed the story parts of it. Like when you're Atreus and you're having conversations with Odin and stuff like that, I'm like, wow, this is cool, because it's neat to see like, their side and what they're thinking and stuff like that. And walking around the main hall of Asgard and seeing that bitch Sif, and and like almost being there as like not like a prisoner, but hated, because they know you killed Thor's sons.
Yeah, there's a really interesting dynamic with that.
Yeah, it's like a tension. I thought the bar brawl scene was really fucking cool. That was really fun. But you're right, it's the tempo of like, I just killed Nidhogg with Kratos and Freya, and then now all of a sudden I'm just on a yak collecting fruit, and I'm like, we can get the story a little bit in a faster way without all the, I understand they're trying to make you like Agrabota, understand what Ironwood is. I just personally think that the cadence of it was a little too slow.
I understand where you're coming from. Real quick though, one note when you're talking about the bar scene, I thought it was really neat the choreography of it, the interactivity of it. Small nitpick, not a real complaint, but in the beginning they're like, oh, you got to check your weapons in, and he's like, oh, why? And he's like, just do it, and like you do it, and then as soon as like some people start punching each other, you're like so quick to get your bow and sword and shit. Everybody's pulling their weapons out. I'm like, weren't you supposed to check those in? Like everyone got those weapons real easily, and no one's even enforcing those rules. So it's like, what the fuck was the point of that? Everyone in here is like literally just murdering each other. He's even at one point, Trace like, Odin's gonna be so angry that we're killing these people. And they're like, oh no, they're already dead. And I'm like, what the fuck's the rule for?
Yeah.
So, anyway, small nitpick. I thought it was kind of funny, but the scene was still great.
And then I have, and my last little nitpick, for the most part, is the sometimes the writing had like the best way to describe it is like a Marvel joke in there.
Yep, I agree with that 100%.
And I'm like, you know, someone would say something, and then Sindri would say like a little quip, and then Atreus would like hit him back, and I'm like, oh my god, this is not unbearable, but like, can we just skip it?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest problems with this game completely, and I swear I almost got nothing but good things to say about this game, but one of my biggest problems is you could tell, I don't know if it's the same writer or not. I know it's a different director this time. Cory Barlog was the
He's a creative director.
So he overlooked it, yeah. But they had a different director this time around, and they did a great job at directing. So, but like, I don't know if the writer was the same. I didn't look or not, but the writing feels different than the last game. The last game felt a little more. I don't want to say grounded, because there's nothing grounded about this, but it felt a little more grittier. It felt a little more down to earth, a little more mysterious. And of course, the story of this game is building to this big epic war that's going to happen. And so it can't be the same in that tone. But the writing does turn into sometimes, not always, there's a lot of really great dialogue in this game, but sometimes the banter is Marvel-ish in the sense that there's a lot of quips, a lot of quick comebacks, very modern wording sometimes with certain things. They don't have to sound like super authentic, but sometimes they sound like a modern person talking in this place. And then as the dude says fuck a shitload. I say fuck too much. They say fuck a lot in this game, which felt weird. Even like Mimir was throwing out F-bombs left and right. And I guess it's just stressful, and you know, fuck's not a new word, but it just totally felt, I was like, that's interesting that they're saying, like, I heard the word fuck like 4 times in like one sentence at one point, or pretty close like that. It was like so rapid fire, and like, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I do that myself, but I'm a piece of shit. I'm not a, you know, I'm not a god of war. So, you know, there's a difference.
It's funny because I don't think Kratos swears once, but
I don't think
yeah,
so.
The first time I really noticed it was you're in that minecart, and
well, he's a stoic, so he's
Svartal.
short on words.
Yeah, you're in that minecart when you're in Svartalheim, and things start to attack, and then it's like tips over, and you know, and Atreus the whole way down is going shoot. And I'm like, okay, like it felt like it was like my little brother instead of like,
yeah. But he's at the age too, though, where he would be like almost annoying when it comes to swearing, because it's like a new, fresh thing.
And Kratos asks him about it instantly.
Yeah. There's like a couple parts where somebody does something, and like Mimir's just like, "What the fuck?" I'm just like, it just feels so weird sometimes.
Which is funny because you hear it out of Brock, and you're like, "Oh, that's Brock."
Yeah, but that's always been him, right? Since like the last game, he was like that.
He's pretty crude, yeah. Yeah,
just crude, frumping around, dude.
Yeah, like especially I think it's right when you get the spear, and the lady of the forge completely just ignores him.
Yeah.
And he gets out and he's like, what the fuck was that all about?
That actually made me laugh, because he builds up this whole situation where he's like, we're going to talk to this chick. I finally get to talk to her because, oh God. Sindri, thank you. Jesus. Sindri's just like, you can't have him go. Like, he'll ruin it, blah, blah, blah. And he just goes there and he's just like, I'm going to get to talk to her, blah, blah, blah. And he goes down there. She like hangs out for a second, goes away. He's like, what the fuck? What the fuck happened? And then after that, it's kind of a bummer because he kind of finds out that he's dead, essentially. He doesn't have a soul. But yeah, it works for him. His character's always kind of like
Mm-hmm.
felt like a, degenerate piece of shit. Like, he has no sense of like, I gotta, be proper or anything like that. So, but
Well, and that's. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, going back to your Marvel point, I felt that as well. I thought, like I said, I think the writing, for the most part, it's really good. But there is some stuff that feels like it would be in a Marvel movie or like in a sitcom or something, and that felt almost beneath what the last game had built.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the tone changed almost, not to the point where I'm like, oh my God, this is a completely different game, but um, I'm like, is there going to be people clapping when Tyr walks out of the kitchen again? Like, what the fuck? Um, but those are probably my biggest gripes
Yeah.
with the game. Um, one thing I really want to give it is character evolution was fucking awesome. Like when Sindri tells Atreus about, we only got 3 of the 4 parts of Brock's soul back.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that's wild. Like, that was kind of a neat little piece. Sindri going off the deep end later after Brock gets fucking knifed by Cuckboy Tyr / Odin.
Odin, yeah.
Um,
Well, that was kind of the
which-
cool thing is like the last game, Sindri and Brock came off as like their utility for your character to upgrade, but as characters, they're like quirky and fun and kind of to the side, and they help a lot in like gadget ways, like, oh, we can figure that out, blah blah blah. In this game, they gave them more to their characters for you to not just recognize them going like, oh, those are those characters I like from the last game, but there's more lore to them, to the point where you understand that Sindri actually has like the secret that he's essentially kept his brother around after getting 3 of the 4 soul cores, whatever it was called, from hell or whatever. So he
Like
got him back,
offline.
but like, yeah, and so it's interesting because like in the last game, I remember looking at them, I'm like, why does Brock look like that?
He's
just
blue.
like he's just blue. Yeah, I'm like, I was like, okay, it's a fantasy game, whatever. I can look past it. But in this, as soon as he started talking about that, I'm like, oh, that explains a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And their relationship's kind of weird because you can tell they care about each other, but they're kind of also detached and kind of, different towards each other. And it kind of adds a little bit to that dynamic when Sindri has that secret.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, is Brock like that because he's missing his last piece, or was he more like Sindri, not like Sindri, but
Maybe he is a little dulled down from what he used to be like.
Well, and like as far as the discoloration goes, it could have to do with the way he died the first time.
Yeah.
And just getting your souls back doesn't necessarily mean your body's going to go back to normal. It just means you get to move around again.
Yeah.
yeah. That I liked. I liked the arc with Freya when she was the Falcon through Vanaheim. I was getting a little irritated, but just because Kratos, who's a man of very few words, was like, I've lost someone, blah blah blah, and she's like, I don't need your fucking your thoughts and prayers or whatever,
Counsel.
and it's like, oh, okay, and then like she says something else, and then Kratos goes, well, blah blah, and then she goes, I don't need your fucking, and I was like, okay, I was like, I get it, I understand you murdered Baldur, and that's hard for her to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
From our perspective, it's like, I understand from our perspective, it's just like, lady, get over it. He was trying to kill you. He saved your life, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even Atreus, I think, says that once or twice to her. But it wasn't until, they go through all that stuff and you kill Nidhogg, and you break her spell that she finally, like, kind of comes around. And then...
Well, and the whole time, too, Kratos is sharing parts of his past, so... So
which
that's
was
something
really
for her
kind
to
of cool
relate to.
because that plus the spear kind of gives us a whole circle of like his whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Because even Brock says, he's like, "Do you know how to use a spear?" He's like, "Spartans were like the first thing we train in is a spear."
Yeah.
And he actually uses very like Spartan moves, like when you run and hit the melee button, he does like that weird Achilles like jump attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really cool to see him kind of go back to the roots of his life as a kid, or not as a kid, but as a young soldier, um, and sharing that instead of just being Kratos. I think has one of the better evolutions, because this whole time, you're starting to trust Atreus. Like, there are times like Atreus will say something, and I'm like, all right, here's a grunt coming, but then Kratos will actually have something to say, like meaningful to say to him, um, to further their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought a lot to the table. So
Yeah.
the character evolution was good. The game is beautiful.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of times, there's a side quest with Freya where you go to where she got married.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these waterfalls.
Yeah.
Like, I was just standing there at the cliff, and I was like, there's like rainbows and shit and all sorts of stuff. And I was like, wow, this is really fucking cool.
You know what I stopped and looked at for a while? During the fucking war in Asgard, I went to the cliffside. I was just watching the World Snake fighting Thor. I was just watching it out in the distance, just like watching it. And I was like, when's it loop? And then it finally did. I'm like, oh, okay. And then it just keeps going. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. Like, you can actually, like, it's not just like, it's like a blue light flying around, but like you can actually see something's in there. And you can see like it moving around, and it's like trying to bite him while he's like flying at it. And I was just like, that's fucking wild looking. That's a really cool thing someone did in anything.
Yeah.
And then later, it might be some of the footage I have in this episode, but I took it because like I was just staring between, because I was fighting some people. I looked behind me, and between two like peaks, I saw the world snake again, just like biting in the air. I noticed Thor was flying around him still over there. But then like I walked to the left a little bit, and there was Ragnarok next to the snake just swinging at Thor. And I'm like, they're both trying to get that motherfucker out of the air. It's like a fly's flying around. They're like, get that motherfucker. I was like, this, like, and most people probably wouldn't have even stopped and looked at that. But like, I just like kind of looked up and I saw him. I was like, oh, what's he? I didn't realize that, like, because I have a good sense of direction. So like after a while, I'm like, oh, I just came from way the hell over there. Then if he's over in this direction now, and then I saw Ragnarok, and I was like, that's fucking crazy. But that's kind of an extreme. But yeah, there's many times in this game where I was like looking at the stuff visually, and I was just like, holy shit. Again, with the world snake again, the first time you run into him out in that snowy area, it was like fucking epic feeling seeing him again, like just in that atmosphere. Totally different than the last time you saw him, which was crazy. Yeah, the game definitely has some visuals. Also, just graphically, if we're talking about it, the best beard I've ever seen in a video game. The detail on Kratos' beard it looks like a real hair.
It's wild.
Everybody's hair looks great, but like his beard is so fucking, it looks, you can see the individual hairs, and it's all like colored, neutral, looks real, wiggles in the wind. His skin is real. Like, I'll look at his character model in the background. The background looks amazing. It looks like a video game. He's real. Like, his character model is just a real dude. But then like behind him, I'm like, oh, it's the video game. They just imported like a real guy into the game, because it looks like he looks incredible.
Like a dude.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was just like, wow, they did a great job on that character model. It's insane.
Yeah, and since he's like covered with ash, because he has the ashes of his loved ones and stuff binded to his skin, it gives it like a unique look that obviously doesn't look like Atreus' skin or Freya's skin or
Atreus'
anybody
skin's
else's
fucked
skin.
up.
Yeah,
that kid's unfortunate looking.
I do like Atreus with his shape shifting, kind of turning. I really like how they turned like Norse mythos on its head.
Mm-hmm.
Like how because Fenrir is supposed to be Loki's kid or something like that in the mythos, but they made it so that like it's his dog. After you put the soul into Garm.
He kind of birthed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a wild fight. when you fought Garm and he kept coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that fight was fucking a spectacle.
Well,
I was like, I was doing the
this,
fight, but I was also just like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is a crazy fight. It's so, like, this is why video games are so amazing. This, I mean, like, when AAA is done right, you get these experiences that you just don't get anywhere else. And you can argue some of it's, like, pretty cinematic, but the scale of it, the interactivity of it, it was like a wild fight that when I finished it, I felt like I fucking accomplished that. Like, whoo, fuck, we're finally over with that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and
yeah.
yeah, because like in the sky, there's all the realm tears that he did, and so like the sky's looking like the Northern Lights, and like you're just fighting him in this epic shit. And he's throwing his fucking chain at you, and the boss battles, huge improvement. A lot of them, the formula of them changed a little bit from the first game. Because I remember fighting Baldur. It's like, all right, in this stage he just does this. In this stage he just does this.
I do think some of them stay formulaic though, because even when I fought Odin and I fought Thor at the end, I became pretty good at knowing exactly what they're going to do, because they don't change up their behaviors as much as like, and those are just spectacles really, but they do have a lot more like side bosses as you play through the game now. And their behaviors are a lot better than they were in the last game. Because I know what you're talking about. Like, it was a little more telling in the first game, but
yeah,
I do think some of the bosses still feel like that a bit.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many of those fucking gators I fought.
Yeah,
whatever the hell those things are called.
Drakes.
Yeah, well, is that what they're called? I thought they were called like Genki or something like that. Yeah, like every time, like, dude, when you're going back from the Freya mission, and you push the boat in the water, and it fucking leaps out at you, scared the shit out of me.
Oh, yeah,
same.
No, I knew something was fucking up with that because I was running to the boat and I ran on the right side of the boat. Obviously, you have to launch it from the other side, I think. I don't remember. But I walked through the boat and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I saw that. I'm like, I've never clipped through a boat before. And then I went to look at the boat to check what the hell happened. And that's when the thing happened. So I was not only distracted by just not thinking something was going to happen, but also distracted because I thought I saw a glitch, which I did. But I was like, what was that? And I'm thinking about that. And then a jump scare happened. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, and like, did you guys fight any of the Berserker bosses?
Yeah.
Like this game's Valkyries.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are way gnarlier.
Yeah, I've done everything in the game, so.
Yeah, Chevy platinumed it.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
He had a couple days off.
I was gonna say I didn't platinum it, but I do enjoy, like, as you play the game, you pretty much can just complete it, like all the Odin Ravens.
Most of it, yeah.
In the first game, I was like, man, these are fucking dumb. They're just hunting, of course, but like in this one, I'd just be running through an area. I'm like, oh wait, there's an Odin Raven here, because you can hear them, and then I realized that they give you shit. When if you kill a certain amount of them.
Well, kind of on top of what you're saying about the God of War 2.0 thing, which I heard a lot of people saying about the game before the game came out. So it's interesting that you're saying that, but in ways that I do agree with that, I don't fully agree with that, but in ways that I do agree with that, the game overall just feels more refined. Like they learned lessons from the last game, and so like things feel less taxing and less of a chore in terms of like the side quest stuff or like the Ravens. I felt less burdened by those. I would just be walking, I'd hear something, I'm like, oh well, if there's one right here, I'm just gonna hit it real quick because I don't want to come back looking for it later. And I would do it and I wouldn't even think about it. Whereas like, in the last game, I felt like if you wanted to do every little thing, sometimes it felt almost like a chore. In this, it's just like the way that they've done it just feels like content. Like it feels more engaging. I don't know why.
You're just walking through it. Area.
But like the audio design of it, which I want to talk about, you can hear the leather folding on his shoes and shit when he's walking. It's so crazy. But anyway, the audio design of like the Ravens and then like seeing them and stuff. It's not like this. Some of them are some really fucky spots, but like it feels more gamey. It feels more fun to figure them out in this one, as opposed to a lot of games where you have to collect a bunch of random shit like that. So
I just think it helps that quite literally everything you do in the game comes with a reward. Like everything. Yeah, I never feel like I'm wasting my time. Like those stone tablet things. I forget what the hell they are. They're all over the place. The lore.
Yeah, the lore. Which is funny because like almost every single time you always walk up to one, you pull Mimir out and he's like, "What's it say, brother?" And then you put him away. And it's just like you pull him out, you show him it, and he's just like, "Fucking, you tell me what's about." And then sometimes he'll comment on him, but for the most part, he's always asking Kratos. I'm like, "You're asking the wrong motherfucker to tell you anything about anything."
I think the first time you do it without Atreus, Mimir mentions, he's like, "It's a good thing you learned how to read this."
So he doesn't.
Read it. Yeah,
Did I
because
miss that?
in the first one, he doesn't know he's relying on Atreus because Atreus knows the language.
Oh yeah. Okay,
and
that makes sense.
In this one, he like mentions he's like, it's a good thing you learned how to read these, huh? And,
I must have fucking spaced that part.
Yeah, I mean,
the whole time I was like, "What the fuck
like
is going on?"
flavor dialogue, so you'd would have had to have caught it. But
Yeah, that corrects everything for me. I just always thought it was funny. He's like, "Why are you even bringing him out? Fucking, if he doesn't know what the hell it says."
He just shares everything with him. He's pretty much his best friend at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I do like a lot of the, as much as some quips were super marvelous, there were some quips that were like genuinely funny.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the crater, and then Atreus is like, "Mimir, wouldn't you like it if you were like in the front instead of the back?"
Oh yeah.
And then then Mimir's like, "Yeah, Kratos just interrupts and goes, "We tried that." and then it was because like Viscera got all over him or something like that. And he's like, "I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't." Little things like that I thought were like genuinely funny. Brock saying, "What the fuck was that about?" After the lady of the fucking forge spurned him.
I actually really liked when Tyr at the time is making food for everyone, and Brock's like comes up to you, he's like, "You're not gonna believe what he's fucking doing over there. He's putting fucking vegetables in it." I was just like, "You're so upset."
Yeah. Because wasn't he cooking before?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably bullshit.
It's really funny because as he's kind of figuring out that Tyr's not Tyr, that moment before he dies, he's like, "You come in here and you make your shitty ass dirt stew or something like that." He's like, "And all these pieces ain't welded together fucking true." He's like, "What the hell's going on? Why are you calling him Loki?" Like
Which I appreciate he said that so much, because like every time he was like calling him Loki throughout the game, I'm like, is he just like sold on that name? Because everyone here doesn't call him Loki. They all call him Atreus here. And he kept calling him Loki, and I'm like, what's up with that? Not that I suspected he was Odin, but
yeah, they did a good job on that.
Yeah, I never thought about that at once, but I was like, I never fully trusted Tyr, and I didn't like him. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, good. Like, there's a good reason I didn't fucking like him then.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he finally asked that, I'm like, thank you. Why didn't anybody else ask that shit? Fucking Brock comes over, he's like, why the hell are you calling him Loki all the time? I also love one of the lines too, where he's like, Tyr's like, I have to grab my things. And he's like, you ain't got things. Just instantly like refutes me making that claim. I'm like, this is so useless but hilarious.
Yeah, and like it's funny that just Brock being a dickhead.
Yeah.
Just like everybody's like thinking it, but he's the only one that's gonna fucking just straight up say it to him. And it's funny how he like starts the twist, you know, like Odin showing his hand and shit, and that little scuffle where fucking Kratos throws a spear and catches the mask. It's a little bit of an aside. The movie The Mask with Jim Carrey, they mention that mask belonged to Loki of the Norse gods. So every time I saw that mask, I was like, that's Jim Carrey.
Dude, no, when I was playing it too, they were talking about the mask and making a big deal about it. And I'm just like, when fucking Atreus had it, I was like, that little motherfucker's gonna put it on and also have a yellow suit on and shit and start dancing around.
Yeah, I didn't quite go there
because it was like similar. Like, yeah, I thought about that too.
But I had the impression It's like, Loki is supposedly known as the liar, isn't he? I figured he'd put it on and like change his
Like a trickster or something. Oh yeah, I was
Yeah.
expecting something like that too.
and that just never happened.
To like actualize him into Loki.
I actually think it was better that they didn't just follow that. But I was expecting it pretty much constantly.
Well, and the whole game constantly tells you fate's real, fate's real, fate's real. Don't make decisions. You have to go with the flow of things. Everything's going to happen the way that the fucking people said it does. And then it just straight up doesn't happen, which is satisfying for me because, I don't believe in fate. So the idea of like, you're locked into things. Like, no. You can stop making these decisions and make other decisions.
Well, the only person who seemed to like not think fate was real was Kratos. Like
Yeah,
everyone,
my boy,
everybody
the
else
stoic
was
Kratos.
like, well, this is just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And everything's falling into place.
Yeah, every time he's saying that shit, he's like, we make our own destiny and shit. I'm like, fuck yeah. That's why he's the goddamn god of war. This motherfucker does what he wants when he wants. But the only reason I even bring that up is you bring up the mask, and like it never told us that was going to happen. But I just kind of thought for a second, I'm like, what if he, like, when they fully complete the mask, I kept feeling like it was going to betray somebody in some way once that mask gets like fully built up. And if fucking Atreus uses it, I thought it was going to like turn into some kind of different arc. That never happened. And I do like the way it ended up going. But I thought it was going to happen just like with the fate thing. They kept talking about it. I'm like, dude, if it goes exactly the way they say it's going to go, that's got to be really lame. They better have some really good writing to make up for that. And they just straight up denied it. They just made the claim, and then went, even the Norns, like, so, I think they said something like, fate's not defined. Like these are essentially predictions, and then the drawings change over time based off of the new predictions.
Yeah, I also loved how they show like a parallel between, because Kratos in the old games went to hit the fates of his time, the oracles, and they were like very self-serving, and you can kind of get a feeling for that in the Norns in this mythology also. Like they just kind of they did the one thing, and then that's all they believed in, and I don't know, it almost felt like they were self-serving and full of shit themselves, which I thought was a really neat play on the supposed fate spinners of their respective mythos. Let me think. Like I said, all we've been talking about is good things about the game. So to wrap everything up, I think the game's awesome. I think it definitely has its place on like the pantheon, no pun intended, of great games when it comes to PlayStation exclusives. I don't want to take away from that. I just have personal gripes with it that don't need to, that in my opinion shouldn't take away from the overall product.
Yeah. You just have criticisms or observations at the very least of pacing, writing, and it seems maybe they didn't do enough to evolve the formula since the last game.
Yeah. Which is crazy because the writing, like I said, I've praised it and I have a criticism of it. So
I feel the same.
It's kind of a unique take on it. But yeah, it's an awesome game. I mean, I don't really have much worse to say about it. I guess that's not that, differentiating of opinions of most people, but all I've seen is just straight like, this is the best game ever made, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so it's good to kind of air that out.
Yeah, for sure. I'll jump into my impressions a little bit here. I'll try and be quick about it. Kind of hit some key points that I want to mention because I feel like we talked about a lot there, and we can definitely dive into anything that I'm talking about, jump in, whatever. But yeah, so overall, I think this game is a strong and refined evolution of the last game. I think it expands on everything the last game did well. It does have some things to criticize like we did already. I might touch on them again, but just to kind of let you know where I'm coming from. But combat's better than the last game. It's definitely, the same system, but far expanded. Not only do you have just Atreus as a extra utility of things to do in combat, but now you have Freya, who's completely different, does similar things to Atreus though. So like for puzzle solving, stuff like that, you're not ever, unable to do that stuff. And then it does a great job of like freshening things up with adding other characters to come with you. That's an evolution of the last game that I felt made the world feel more rich and full of life, and made the characters feel just better as characters, that they could go on adventures with you, and it wasn't just always like a set piece where you just follow somebody. Sometimes they're just with you and they're in combat with you. And even people who aren't as proficient in combat as like somebody like Freya or Atreus still have something to offer in fights. And so that's a really cool system.
I actually also think that system does a really good job of like helping expand lore and storytelling in the game without making you watch cutscenes, because you're constantly having a dialogue with different people all the time, playing as different people all the time.
There's a lot of lore built up from ambient stuff in the game, which I think is smart.
Yeah, and so you're taking in a lot of it without always being a cutscene, because they could have very easily added way more cutscenes in this game, and it would have really been a pacing problem at that point. I think they were definitely finding other ways, and I think they succeeded in giving you more information without making it feel like a chore. And I think that system helps a lot with that.
So much so that I missed that Mimir thing at some point. I don't even know where the hell that happened. I assume early on. But yeah, I think combat is better, plain and simple. You could make parallels, comparisons from the original game, which makes sense. Uncharted 2, you still shoot people. Uncharted 3, you still shoot people. But I think the skill trees have expanded. There's more of them, especially with adding the spear, which I think is a great addition. I think the spear is an awesome weapon. It wasn't my main weapon. I actually started using the axe.
And all the shields.
There's a lot of variety there. A lot of gear. A lot of things you can add to gear now too, like stun, damage, stuff like that. You can really fine tune and make a build even more than you could in the last game, and that is awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of customization, but there's only like 6 or 8 stats. I can't remember, and so like
it feels like a mix between like a pretty complicated system, but also like casual friendly.
Yeah, they're not giving you so much math that it makes it a pain in the butt, but they are giving you a lot of tools to adjust those stats.
Yeah, it feels like you can fine tune your gameplay style, because
100%.
I'm more of a run and gun guy in every game I ever play. And in this game, I kind of built my Kratos up to, I was using something that when I used my dodge attacks, I did more damage doing the dodge attacks, because I use them a lot anyway, because I'm always moving. And so I got to the point where I was doing that paired with a couple of the abilities on my weapons were like spin attacks or like really quick hit everybody moves, that I was constantly just moving and hitting crowds nonstop. That's how I like to fight. And I could realize that through this combat system, which was really cool. And then with like the light and heavy abilities for 3 different weapons on top of whoever's your ally, and how you have them built, especially if it's Atreus or Freya, you get to have another set of skill trees. Interesting, with Atreus, you lose that skill tree at the end of the game. But with Freya, it makes sense that you spend so much time building her up, because she sticks around with you. And so I just like really enjoyed the combat in this game. I liked it in the first game, but in this one, when I got things kind of moving the way I wanted them to be moving, I really loved just wrecking people. In the beginning, it was a little slow going. Like I said, I started using the axe because I could do a lot of the distance combat, throwing the axe, dodging around, stuff like that. I'd go to the swords if like a weak crowd showed up and I wanted to hit them all. But then as I started leveling myself up and adding things to the weapons to make them more powerful, I started moving over to the chain swords. I started using those and just using those mainly, and then I'd switch over to the axe if I needed to throw something or, get off some of his heavy and light abilities when they recharge, just to get that extra damage in. And then with the spear added, it just added another tool to my toolkit for combat that just always felt raw and intense and crazy. And just being able to like one moment just be swinging swords through people and like throwing people in the air, throwing my swords into them and fucking blowing them up, and then switching over to my axe, spinning into people, and then using my heavy attack, slamming into a dude's chest, spinning and throwing them off a cliff or into people, and then using the spear. And later when you get that upgraded, I'm like stabbing dudes with my abilities, and then spears are stuck in them after I stab them a bunch of times, and then I'm just able to detonate those off and then switch back to a weapon. It just has such a good flow.
It's also really smart with the spear too, because like it wasn't just like you stabbed and there was a spear there. He would let go, and then another one would manifest in his hands, because obviously the spear's technically the ring. So,
which is interesting too because it becomes a new tool for the Castlevania-like exploration, the Metroidvania style exploration, in the sense that if you can just generate spears, he'll grab a rope sometimes, attach the spear, throw it, get it in there, and then just get another spear back.
Just like
and it's like it's a cool. It's fitting to the lore, and it's also fun when it comes to the gameplay element of it. So, long story short, I really like the combat a lot. I think it's a really good evolution of the last game, and I think the addition of the spear and the new characters to play with only expand the combat further, and I really enjoyed that. The 9 realms, exploring all of them, feels like a lot. But when you kind of get to a realm and you decide you're going to just quest here for a little bit and you start forgetting about the other realms, just kind of treat it like its own zone, which they are, I think there's a lot of fun with that exploration. Pacing can feel off sometimes, for sure. I felt that too. Sometimes I felt like I was like, I should be maybe doing this instead of this. But I think every mission individually, maybe it's the in-between stuff. Maybe it's all the rowing around, which is just time for story building, I guess. But it always felt like long and drawn out. But the quests always felt like once you started and ended them, they always felt like bite-sized. They're always responsibly sized. There's never like a huge, long, slugging mission unless there's like a main mission with a huge story playing out. But like when you're doing like side quests, stuff like that, like I remember in the first area and in Vanaheim, rowing around, and I'm just looking at the sides and I'm seeing like a chest in the wall there and this, and I'm like, Jesus, like how am I gonna find all this? And I felt like overwhelmed. But then I get to a starting point, I go through it, and I end up organically just finding those things naturally, just doing that side quest. And by the time I'm done, I'm like, I almost felt relieved. I'm like, that's good design.
yeah.
Like they're showing me like, oh, you're gonna want that, but they don't tell you how you're gonna do it. But then when you finish a mission, the mission's designed for you to have found all those things. And so like they're not really like keeping it a secret from you. They're just showing you that there's stuff for you to get here as long as you're doing those side quests. I had to kind of rewrite the way I was looking at that because it felt like really like intimidating at first. Like, holy shit, there's so much stuff to find here. But then, yeah, they designed it in a way that allows you to find it fairly easily. On exploration, some of the, I guess, puzzles, the basic ones of like, you know, using the runic arrows and stuff to put them in positions and light them and you know, kind of what Josh is talking about when they're talking to you and stuff like that. I liked most of those, honestly. Some of them were kind of annoying, but those were kind of fun puzzles for me because I liked having to position the orbs in certain spots to get like you know, one of the torches lit to get the chest open. Sometimes if it was going a little longer, I felt like I was wasting time there, especially with the dialogue. They'd just be like backseat gaming about it, but not being like specific enough. They're just kind of like being vague about it. I'm like, shut the fuck up for a second, hold on. But for the most part, those are pretty fun. There's just there's a lot of things when you're exploring that are just like just enough for you to stop and think for a second, but not like sit there for too long and just go, oh my God, dude, this is fucking stupid. So I think they were done responsibly for the most part. There's a couple that were annoying, but for the most part, I think they're pretty good. We already went over like collectibles and stuff like that, but I'm not a big collectibles guy. So that I think I have like near 30 without looking up the Ravens. So I mean, like I grabbed a good amount of them. I think there's like 48 of them.
Yeah, I was missing 4 by the time I beat in the game, so I just looked those 4 up to knock it out.
I mean, like,
fortunately, when you look at the map, it has the checklist for you too.
Yeah.
So I would just be like, oh, okay, I'm missing an Odin Raven here, and I would just be like, where's the Raven I missed? And then every time I look at it, I was like, how'd I miss that?
Yeah.
But I think a large part of that too is when Josh brought up the sound thing, my sound setup on my PlayStation is not good. And so like I didn't even hear them ever.
Yeah, there's a lot of times I was just running around on a mission and I would hear it and I would go, okay, hold on. And I like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So it is a huge.
Yeah, there's a couple times when it'd be flying around in the air, and I would just get fucking fed up
Mhm.
because I'm like, how far away is that fucking thing?
Yeah.
Like I'm throwing my axe a fucking 100 times. Then when you got the spear, it just became instantly easier.
Yes, I was telling Chevy too, when we were talking about this earlier. I was like, once you get the spear, you just start rapid firing those things at them.
Yeah. But yeah, that's. I agree. There are some of them where I think I just left them because I was like, I can't keep just sitting here trying to throw my axe into it. Fuck this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started realizing that you get like great heavy runic attacks from them. And then I was like, okay. So I cleaned them up a lot.
And an armor
because
set.
I wanted those. Yeah. And the armor sets was pretty good too.
Pretty good. Yeah, it didn't fit my playstyle, but it seemed pretty good. So.
Well, so that's kind of just the great thing about the collectibles in this game is, like you said already, Chevy, you get something for doing them, and that's if you want me to collect your collectibles in a game, I need to be rewarded because I'm not a person who wants to get 100% on a game, and I appreciate people who want to do that. That's awesome, especially if you play a game a lot. You might want to knock all those out, but like for me, I want to beat a game and play the next game because I'm always playing something new, and so you got to make it exciting for me, and the excitement of 100%ing it's not there for me. So XP, I like XP, I like rewards, I like money. So if you just give me something for it, I'm into it, and this game does that. So I was really happy about that. On top of exploration as well, the scenery is fantastic in the game. It's a gorgeously visual experience that I just really enjoyed. I was constantly just looking at everything and the details and the pathing, even though it is, you could argue it's just like a lot of hallways outside of the open areas. It's all handcrafted. It looks really great. Everything feels intentional, and all the realms feel different, which is really cool. On top of that, enemy variety is fantastic. They have 9 realms, and there's a lot of enemy types. Now, some might just be like reskins of other body types, but their behaviors, their abilities, all sorts of stuff. I have realms I didn't want to go to as much as other realms because the enemy types there I fucking hated fighting.
Not Niflheim.
Niflheim.
Alfheim.
Yeah.
Fuck that place.
The elves are really annoying.
I hate the elves, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And even when you're there, when you run into them again, when you're trying to leave, I think it's like a trash. So he's like, oh god, he's like, there's more of them. Like they're even self-aware that these enemies are annoying to fight.
Obnoxious.
Yeah, and like the orb guys are super easy to kill, but they were just kind of like cliff racers for me. They were annoying. They would like be flying around and you just shoot some arrows into them and then kill them.
The nightmares.
No.
The fleshy ones or the wisps?
No, the wisps.
Okay.
Those ones were just like not hard. They're annoying. The nightmares are annoying too, for sure.
I think the nightmares are way worse than the wisps.
I think they're both annoying. That
arrows would
like
kill
flying around and
yeah.
you just gotta stop to kill them real quick and move on. They didn't really pose a threat. They're just kind of like there to keep you busy. I'm not upset they're in the game. I just don't enjoy fighting them.
Right.
But like a lot of like most of the humanoid enemy types are a lot of fun to fight. The big fights are. The big, huge fights are amazing, but like even like like a giant troll shows up or something like that. There's just a lot of variety in the game, and games that are smaller in scale have far less enemies in them. When you figure if you made a smaller game, you could spend more time on the enemy types. This game's not small, and there's a shitload of enemy types in it. So I really appreciated that. There's a lot of variety, and you always feel when you're in a realm that you're going to be fighting something that belongs here, which I really enjoyed. A lot more mini bosses in this game than the last game. I remember in the last game, a lot of people wanted more of that, and they gave us more. So I appreciate that. The berserkers are there. There's a random. I remember I was walking by, I looked over, and there's like a red one of those werewolf guys. I forgot what they're called, and they're like, "Oh, careful with that one. That's an alpha." They're like, that's going to be a tough fight.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Freya said something about it, and I was like, I'm going to fuck that thing up.
Yeah.
Then.
And then I just whooped his ass. And he was a little crazier than the other ones, but it was cool because you didn't have to fight him. He's just over there, and there's a reward.
When you revisit the prison cell that you found Tyrion, there's a fucking troll in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and because I was just walking through, and all of a sudden the music went crazy, and a fucking hit point bar showed up. I was like, "What the hell is happening right now?"
Yeah. So they, long story short, they added all these mini bosses all over the place, and it's great variety. You know, you're fighting all these enemies, you can beat them pretty quickly. They pose different challenges, but then every once in a while you gotta like sit and fight a dude. You know, those are the big experiences that you go, hell yeah, dude, like that was dope. And they happen more often than this, so it's cool. Also, the I forgot what it's called, but there's like 8 of them. The Draugr guy with the fire pits.
Oh,
It's one.
yeah, the fire. Yeah, the 6 of them.
Yeah, six or 8. Yeah,
You fight the same person
Yeah.
6 times.
yeah. I thought that was neat. The first time I ever fought him, he fucking kicked my ass. I had to use one of those things. I forget what they're called. The crystal,
Resurrection
the resurrection thing.
Stone.
I had to use one of those. I didn't buy this very often. I'd never really.
I always kept one on me.
Towards the end, I started doing it because I'm like, why don't I just have one on me? But like, most of the game I didn't even use one, and I'm not even saying that. I would just die and restart, which sucked. But
I brought this up to you, but a couple of the berserkers and then the Valkyrie fight, I had to use them on a couple of those just because like they were just so aggressive, and I play very defensively. So
yeah,
So those berserkers, like there's one that just like right when he started shooting like lightning from the air,
the lightning one was pretty annoying.
and I was like, man, fuck you, because it almost killed me, almost like instantly. I was like, I'm a little under geared for this.
Yeah, the first berserker I ran into when the thing started up and the arena kind of formed, I was like, oh shit, this is like a Valkyrie type thing.
Yeah.
And I started fighting the guy, and I was like, I'm gonna come back to this because like he was like just going fucking insane. I almost killed him too, but yeah, I ended up dying, and I was like, this feels like something I should come back and just start like knocking these dudes out one at a time, because I was like really deep in the story at that point. I wanted to keep moving, so. But you know, that goes to what I'm saying. Enemy variety, mini bosses, a lot of options. I never even went to the arena place.
I finished it.
Yeah, I haven't even been there.
It is
Muspelheim.
just the same as the first game. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of like that when they do that in DLCs and stuff either. Like
Trials.
This isn't even a DLC. It's just straight with the game.
Well, and the reason I finished it, outside of like, by the time I beat the game, like I said, I had like 4 achievements left, and one of them was to finish that place. I was just like, every time you complete one of these, even if you repeat them, you get a gold chest full of stuff. So I was like, all right, I can level up my swords or my weapons this way. So
Yeah, now that I'm not trying to meet a deadline to finish the game so we can have this like full spoiler conversation, which I'm really stoked we were all able to do that and be able to do this. But I want to go back and do all the little things because the game's fun. I enjoy playing it.
there's a lot of lore in there too.
And there's just a lot of shit in the game to like unlock. And there's things to get Kratos, stronger to fight. It's not over yet.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's awesome to me. So, and the last game did that too with the Valkyries, which I thought, you know, a game like this doesn't need an end game, but it did. And that's awesome. And this game did even more with it. So, you know, God of War 2.0, if we want to call it that. It's an evolution, and it's a better evolution. I'm really happy about that. So let's see. Exploration's awesome. The realms are awesome. Visually amazing. Character models are great. Graphics are great. We don't need to talk about that. It's a really good looking game. Combat, love the combat. The music's good. Music's really good. It's not as good. It's not like a soundtrack that blew me away, but it's very fitting. It works really well. The sound design's really impressive. I was listening constantly to I have my surround sound headphones on. I got it cranked, and just hearing in cinematics where like Kratos is grabbing his axe and he's running his fingers on the metal, and you can hear the metal on fingers, and then he touches the wood, and you can hear the wood, and then like he's moving, and you can hear the weight of his body pushing leather against the ground. And you can hear the leather folding when he moves and stuff. I'm like, these are all... They probably just had somebody wear something like that and recorded it. But, like, it's so impressive. It's so immersive. So a lot of the sound design's really good. And not just in the cinematics, but, like, in the combat. A lot of sound cues, a lot of things being called out. They do have visuals that show you when things are about to hit you. But even your companions will tell you to your left, to your right, brother, all that shit. That's, like, really precise. It's really good feedback.
I actually really appreciate, because I really hate when they clutter a bunch of colors on this. I mean, there was a complaint with the Gotham game that came out. Like, I thought the indicators for things were like
Gotham
a
Knights.
little too wild. This game still has that, and I'm not like the biggest fan, but in the heat of battle, I actually didn't notice the rings that much. It was
They're
just
kind of
enough.
faded and below your, like, around your waist almost.
Yeah,
They're not like up in the air.
Well, I mean the rings when they're in front of you.
Oh, you're talking
right?
about the rings? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're
and
talking about
then
the
the
indicators.
arrows,
Yeah.
the indicators. Yeah, they're just these little tiny yellow ones, so you know, and then red when they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And so it's just enough, for you, because you fight groups of people and they will not take turns sometimes. So like,
Yeah.
it's good to have those. Otherwise, you're going to get interrupted a lot and probably make combat less fun. It is a video game, so
Yeah.
So I do think they handled that part well, and a lot of that too is the sound, because you
The
hear
sound, the visual design, they to get that HUD down and all those things down to the point where it's not annoying and like done responsibly. Like they taste tested the fuck out of that, I'm sure, in beta testing, because it works. One thing, thinking about combat real quick, I don't want to go back to combat too much, but one thing I really enjoyed is they, I forgot what, God, I can't think of names right now, but when you essentially go Super Saiyan and hit the two buttons,
Rage.
Spartan Rage, yeah. I like that there's 3 versions of that.
Yeah,
You can
there's a
heal.
nice, tidbit, Dad.
Yeah, which one do you guys use the most? Because I used
Traditional.
I used the one where you charge people the most.
Yeah,
I used the original.
Yeah,
yeah, I did too.
I was
tried all
gonna
3.
I was gonna stick with that one because that one just works. Like you just go crazy, start punching the shit out of people, and you can kind of save you for a second. The healing was nice, but I hated not having that buffer, that oh shit button.
The healing also will only give you a partial heal if you hit partway through it.
Yeah,
Because I was
Yeah,
experimenting
that
with
annoyed
it.
the fuck out of me.
Yeah, I was experimenting with it because I was having trouble with the very last Berserker, and because he was just hitting me so often, I was like, I just need like enough health so I can run over and grab a health.
Yeah.
So, and I would go to use it, and I thought it wasn't very good, and then there was a moment for some reason he decided to attack Freya, and I was like, oh, okay. And I got to use a full one. I got more health out of it. I was like, "Oh, I'm being interrupted." Mm-hmm. That sucks, because when you're when you have the original Spartan Rage, you're not getting interrupted.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always use that
Like-
one as a no shit button. If things are getting crazy, I'd fucking hit that and kind of give myself a second to kind of recalibrate, try and take out key targets that I want to get rid of right now, or give myself time to heal and shit.
Yeah, it also had it was like a parry, the healing one, because if you did it at the right time, you'd actually got a boost of strength also.
Yeah.
But like it seemed like half time I would use it, and then I'd get hit by the attack, and then I would just like lose all the health. I just healed back anyway, and I'm like, Jesus fuck.
Yeah, because you're kind of animation locked for a second. With
Yeah.
It, so.
So it's like you almost had to run away and use it, but especially like the werewolves, they're up your ass. So, and they don't quit. There's times they go into like that spin cycle, and like you have to fucking guard against it.
Yeah, what you're saying about like the animation kind of makes you invincible at some points. Like I utilized that a lot, but the charge one I used ever since I unlocked it, I stuck with it because it recharges quickly. You get a lot of charges. You don't just have one big one. You do like one. You slam into dude. You hit him.
But yeah.
2.
When you get a full bar, it's like 2 bars.
Oh, I was able to do like 3 in a row.
No, I'm talking about the traditional.
You're talking about the the traditional. Okay, gotcha. But and there's like these big things that like I said, that's the one I stuck with originally. But then I started using the charge because the way I play really aggressive. And so like when I'm fighting a bunch of dudes, I'll find like the highest level dude, and I'll just like or even small dudes, I'll try and kill them as quick as possible, get rid of the ad type thing. But if there's a dude giving me problems, I'll just like spam my abilities at him in a fucking corner, and then when he goes to do something, I'd use the fucking rush, and I'd slam into him, and I'd hit him and interrupt him, and then I'd use another ability on him, and then he'd go to do something, I'd fucking slam into him again and just hit him, and I'd just keep him busy so he couldn't fight me. And it was super useful for me. I really fucking liked doing that, and it recharges so quickly that like I was using it pretty often. So but anyway, I really like that they had that. This game really wanted to allow people to fine-tune the way they fight. They want to fight with Kratos while still maintaining Kratos as a character, because even at one point in the beginning when they're jokingly saying like, hey, maybe we should try and stealth into the next place, and Kratos is like, no, Just like, because that's not him.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of guy who's gonna sneak up to kill people. He's gonna show up and he's just gonna fucking wreck everybody.
Dude doesn't even have relaxed posture. He stands like he's just ready to fucking hit someone at all times.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. And so I like that they kind of make a joke about that, because like a lot of third-person action games nowadays, especially open-world games, stuff like that, will have some kind of stealth mechanic to them. And God of War, good for them. They don't have to develop that system, but also it doesn't welcome it. Like Kratos is not that character, and so that they can add all these varieties on the way he can fight while still maintaining that he's just a brutal motherfucker. Even when he's healing, he's brutal. Like it works really well.
Mad the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just perfect the way they got that. So yeah, combat's good, sound design's great, fantastic, music's really good. The story as a whole, I almost feel like I like the last game's story better, only because it's a little more intimate, a little more personal, a little more gritty. I like the character building of Kratos and Atreus together. It has a very Last of Us or The Road vibe to it, which I really dig. But the scale of this story is so much bigger than the last game that there's so much little stories in it to take in that is just great, in my opinion. The amount of lore that's offered in this game is insane. The first game is like an introduction to this new world that Kratos is in. It's like Stranger in a Strange Land style thing where everybody's like, why the fuck are you here? Who are you? Yeah. And Kratos is also like, don't talk to me. Get the fuck away from my cabin. Kind of situation.
I want you to know I'm here.
Exactly. Like, I'm just trying to chill. And even in this game, towards the end, he's like, we're going back to the cabin. Like, fuck you guys. Have your war. I'm going to take care of me and my kid. That's it. Yeah. Trying to revert back to that. But this game's scope and scale is just so much bigger than the last game. But then, like, towards the middle to the end, I start getting a little more hooked to the story in the sense of, like, just the gravity of it. It started feeling really good. So the story is really good. I like that it kind of ties up loose ends. It deals with every consequence of the last game. With Baldur's death and Freya. I do think Freya was kind of handled sloppily in her writing. She's still a good character, but she kind of came off one note for a lot of the game. But I can get into that in a sec. But the story leading to Ragnarok felt epic, especially when you found, what's his name, Surtur? The guy who turns into...
I think so.
Like, that whole scene...
That fucking space scene was gnarly.
It was wild. And you gotta, like, when you drop him off, then the two Valkyries came, I'm like, this is fucking fantasy, dude. This is high fantasy. I love this shit. This is fucking dope. I also looked at that and I thought of Elden Ring for a second. I'm like, man, we got 2 games in 1 year. They're like Scandinavian style fantasy, like crazy shit. Like it's I don't know. It's been nice to see that kind of imagery. But yeah, at that point when everything starts like getting really crazy and like war's coming and you're preparing for it, like that was dope. And then like the whole war scene was awesome. I was wondering how they're going to handle that. And as soon as you show up, you see like all these dudes flying all over the place. They got like defense systems set up.
That you watched them build and had no idea.
Yeah. The part where Sindri shows up and he's just fucking looking like Frodo with the one ring at the end of Lord of the Rings fucking Return of the King when he's in the volcano all ash-faced and shit. Sindri's looking wild. He just shows up and they're like, how are we going to get rid of these things? And he just hammers that thing and just blows them all the fuck up. And then there's like civilians like buried under everything. I'm just like, this is getting raw. The story was good. It was cool. And I like a lot of the arcs. I kind of was not surprised by Thor because I knew right in the beginning they wanted to make him like a likable dude, and they really try to push that he's like this drunk, troubled warrior type dude, and you partner with him later and do stuff with him, but that they just like blatantly killed him off, I thought was pretty bold. I expected to see more of him maybe in a next game or something, so that's pretty crazy.
He didn't get an opportunity for redemption. It was just
exactly, yeah.
Fucking Odin's like, well, you're useless to me now.
Yeah. And I'll get into characters in a sec because I have a lot to say about that. But yeah, the story was big and epic, and I do think it's really interesting how they went the route. Even though I thought it was kind of sloppy in some parts, where like Atreus was like, "I can't tell you, Dad," and Chris was like, "Can I trust you?" And he's just like, "You just gotta trust me." And he's like, "I don't know if I can." And he's like, "You just gotta do it." I'm like, you're not giving him a whole lot of room to trust you with the way you're talking to him. But I do think it's a really interesting dynamic where you are going to Asgard and experiencing their world pre-war and seeing how everything runs there. I thought it was really neat, and kind of doing work with Odin, who I think was a pretty likable character, even though I didn't trust him. I thought he was a charming, charismatic character, but he's a manipulator, so he should be charming and
fit his MO. So.
As soon as he started talking, I'm like, this guy's trouble, because like I kind of like her, I kind of like him, but he's definitely, he wants something. Like he's not trustworthy for sure, and he's not too nice to Thor. So yeah.
Real quick, speaking about Asgard, when you come over the wall, because like ever since the first game, I was like, "Ooh, Asgard! I wonder what that's gonna look like. Like, how crazy is it's gonna look?" You come over the wall, and it's just like a village of Vikings.
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh, this is actually really neat. I really like how they didn't like make it like some weird futuristic shit." Because like in Valhalla, you go to Asgard. Like Assassin's Creed, and it's all like futuristic and crazy, like skyscraper rebuildings.
Well, in Marvel, it's all like white stone, shiny, like, you know, it's just like the perfect place. And this place, it's like, you know, Vikings that are gods live there, Valkyries, and even Atreus sees. He assumed that Odin would be living in like a palace, some kind of castle or whatever, and he's just like, oh, that's like his you know. I forgot what he called it. It's like a big tent or some shit, or big building, but
that he built himself.
Yeah, and he's like, he's not. Why would he live in that? Like, it's just a completely different culture. We're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, versus like from Kratos' background, the Spartan gods did live in royalty, basically. So
yeah, so it was it just felt a little more, and like with Thor being this big fat dude, he was tough as shit, but like he liked to drink.
He was strong man.
Yeah,
fat. Yeah.
It worked. Yeah. He was still threatening. You look at him like, so that's just a big motherfucker. You're not going to do anything to that guy. Like, the game
he takes an axe to his stomach pretty well. So
he was walking around most of the game with just an open wound. I was just like, is that thing gonna heal?
I love that part where you're in Muspelheim and Atreus tricks him into doing the trials.
Oh yeah.
And like the whole time you're like going to see that. You're going to look at Surtur's cabinet, those fucking lore cabinets, and the whole time you can just hear him in the background talking shit.
I swear you can hear him from that far away, just going nuts,
bellowing.
I was trying to like convince him. He's like, "Hey, you should go do this thing." He's like, "Eh." He's like, "You should do it." He's like, "All right," and he like just jumps off and he's just wrecking shit. And he comes back telling you like, "I fucking killed everything."
Yeah, I like how he just admits he had fun for a moment.
Yeah. So I gotta admit that was pretty fun. But
it's just back to business.
Speaking of Asgard, real quick, that was one of those zones that I stopped and looked at shit. Before you go over the wall, when you're walking through Death Stranding, essentially, I was like looking around. I was like, "This is fucking cool looking. This feels alien. This feels like a weird realm. It feels like a realm you could exist in, though. Like, you know, even though you're running into monsters constantly." Trace is like, "Why do I have to fight these things? I thought he invited me." And then you come upon like, you know, a bunch of people who live outside the wall, and it's a huge fucking wall. Like it's massive. Yeah, exactly. It felt so. It made sense. If you're if you know your threats and you're trying to keep them out, you construct something like that. And even when Trace is talking about how the Giants built the wall or whatever, and Heimdall's like, "You think that?" Like they have completely different histories that they know when it comes to that. So it just felt, I don't know, it felt authentic. It felt like it just worked. And like you were saying with how Asgard looks, it's just like a village. With like Valkyries and stuff, which is wild. It was really cool. It was really like grounded, but like also high fantasy. That I really enjoyed it. Yeah. What was I talking about before? Oh, the story. Yeah, the story's good though. Story's good. The story's huge and epic, and mostly just an amalgamation of many stories that play out. A lot of characters in this game that you get to meet, and characters from like the past, like that dude who's like the boar or the pig or whatever before. That was interesting.
Yeah.
When you run into him, the one that Atreus shoots. There's just a lot to it when it comes to lore and story. And then, of course, the big things, the finale where you fight Thor. It's surprising he gets murdered. Makes sense, though, why he got murdered. Fighting Odin, which was an interesting fight, because I was like, that motherfucker's definitely got to know how to fight. He just kind of walks around talking a lot, but then, he gets kind of crazy at the end. That fight was not that hard, though.
No, it was Thor just was worse. Fucking Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Because there's so many times I was in there just beating his ass.
Yeah.
And Trace was running in, fucking swinging at him, and Frey's running in, swinging at him at the same time.
Felt like more of a spectacle than anything, but it was definitely like the finale. It's like Thor was the fight, and the finale was Odin, just kind of seeing what happens with him.
Though I hate fighting anything that gives you the Bifrost debuff, man.
Yeah, Bifrost is annoying as shit. Annoying. Yeah. And Frey gets weird as soon as Odin gets down, and she like starts choking him out. I was like, this motherfucker's going to kill Odin, and then she's going to be like, I'm going to kill Kratos now, too, and everybody. Like, I was waiting for her to have her, like, fucking villain 2.0 arc. But she didn't, so that's good. And then, yeah, the end with, when it comes to story, Atreus leaving, that was really interesting. Wasn't expecting that to happen, especially because I spent time building up his skill tree. And he's just like, I'm out of here. It was a touching scene. It was cool to see Kratos see on one of those like those fate tablets that people are going to celebrate him and not fear him. That's something that he hasn't really experienced. His arc with closing your heart to it, then opening your heart to it. It's fine. It's the idea of softening Kratos up isn't super appealing to me, but it's a good message. Because he has to learn to adapt and be good for his son as well. It's not just about the way he views things and the way he was raised and what he went through, but now he's got to allow Atreus to be his own person.
I don't know. I think it also kind of works too, though, because in the first game he's spending the whole game like trying to like put that life behind him, but he's doing it in a way like which you shouldn't do, which is bottle everything up, and in the second game. He's still doing that for a lot of it, and eventually he just like, makes small attempts to like actually understand other people's perspective of the thing and like put a little more trust into people. So I think it makes sense. I do think it is pushed a little hard.
Yeah,
but
it feels a little mushy. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think it was laid a little heavy, a little heavy-handed.
Well, and in like a throwaway line, I think Sif says it to him or something like that. Somebody says to Kratos one time, like, you have no idea what being a god is. You've never been worshipped. You've never been, like, people don't ask you for stuff or care for you or whatever. And I was like, man, that's kind of rough, but it's true.
When you're in the Dwarven realm, when you run into Odin, that's when that conversation happens, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. And then at the end, when he opens up that cabinet and he sees the statue of him, I was like, oh, shit, he is going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
that was really cool.
He's been like reluctantly the god of war, but it's all been vengeance and fear and war essentially. And now that like towards the end they're looking to like help people, and they're able to do something good that benefits people. It kind of shines him in a different light, makes him a hero for the first time, because he's always. You played God of War for the vengeance aspect. You want Chris to get fucking these people.
Yeah, but he's not
get
a good
back.
Guy,
yeah, exactly. But now, there's evolution of raising a kid and accepting him for who he is. And now, that's slowly, people get softer as they get older anyway. But like, it just kind of adjusts things to where Kratos can finally, be a hero and not just the dude who will destroy you if you wrong him. Atreus' arc I thought was really interesting. They really have evolved him into his own character, which I really appreciate. He was kind of a side thing in the first game, something to protect. He was an interesting part of the story for sure, a huge part of the dynamic of the whole game. But in this game, at first I'm like, is he just gonna like bitch and fucking rebel the whole game? But like because in the beginning they're like constantly just like, oh, I should be able to do this, blah, 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 blah. Like, and
The first fit he throws where he runs away, I audibly was like, you little shit.
yeah. And I was like, okay, I get it. This is a trope. We can do this. But I think they actually did a really good job on Atreus. He obviously cares about his dad, and he's trying to be good towards his dad. And his dad is like short, stoic,
We do it my way.
not expressive.
Yeah.
He's a general type dude. He's like, this is how it's done. If we're gonna survive, just fucking listen to me. And he's typically right, but that's not good for a relationship. And so, Atreus evolving into his own character. He's not just Kratos' son. He's not just like, even in the way he fights, his abilities. He's interesting because he's half giant, half god. So he has like weird abilities that Kratos doesn't have. And they really have fleshed him out and I don't want them to do this, but if they wanted to make a game where he plays Atreus, they could. He works on his own. He needs to grow up and become a more interesting main character. But his evolution as he gets older, I think this is 3 years after the last game, he does feel like somebody who was a kid who's learning things and becoming their own person. I think they did a really good job with that.
Yeah.
In his arcs, when he goes and hangs out, what Josh was talking about when they're riding the yak around the swamp, or whatever, with Agrabota, I thought that was a really fun, independent scene. It was pretty long. I felt that as well. It was a long scene, but the story before that wasn't gripping me a whole lot. And once we started diving in a little bit into the Giants lore, I thought that was pretty interesting stuff. And Angrboda was an interesting character. I think she's a little cliche, but she's fun, and a lot of stuff she brings to the story, I thought was really good. And she's not around all the time too, which I appreciate. There's so many characters that I'm like, we don't got room for like everybody. Like we can only have so many, but like she'll pop in every once in a while and add some stuff to it. And I thought that was a lot of fun, especially the whole like souls in the marbles thing. I was like, that's fucking wild. Like that's a whole thing. Like they could make a whole game where Trace is looking for these marbles. And when he just puts the fucking soul into that snake randomly and just goes away, I'm like, all right. Like, we know where it goes now. But, like, when that first happened, I was like, where'd that snake go? Like, what's going to happen with that?
Yeah, that was actually a really cool scene because that really starts, like, how time is a circle.
Yeah.
Because they talk about how Jorgamander, or the giant world snake, was just a python at one time, but it grew.
Yeah.
So Atreus was setting him in motion, which was wild.
Well, I think also in the first game they mention that the world snake. I think the world snake mentions he's familiar with Atreus, and Atreus.
Yeah, that he was familiar.
Yeah,
yeah,
and so it connects that.
Yeah, it's wild.
Which is interesting because you play that first game and he says he's familiar, or whatever, and then they keep playing this idea of like Loki, and it's like, well, what's that all about? But it's not even what they're going for. Because I was almost for a second in that game going like, is there like a separate entity or separate part of Trace we don't know about that like, some things can recognize from him? But no, he literally like created him, set him into motion. So it's really, really interesting the way they did that. But anyway, story's cool. I like how they handled Atreus. I did like his combat parts and his story parts, but they were very linear. They were just for story, and those fights did feel really easy. But also
way easier.
It also felt like a third-person shooter to me, so I was like right at home with it. I was like dodge around just shooting shit, and I'd run and smack people around, and I'd dodge around some more and shoot some more. But like his whole transformation thing's really cool. I think it's fitting for who his mom was and the giants and stuff like that. To have like these like almost like I can't think of it. What are the characters in like Diablo who can turn into things?
Like a werebear,
druid,
or like a druid.
Yeah, it has like a druidic feel to it, which I really kind of dug. And just separates him so much from Kratos as a character. They feel so different now, which I'm really happy. Although that kid's got to watch his hairline as he gets older. I don't know if that's Kratos shaving it or if that's... But I was looking at that kid, I'm like, you got to get rid of that dorky hair you got, kid. It's not going to last long.
His mom's got a full head of hair.
True. And yeah, with that, story's cool. Characters, I like most of the characters. I think some of them are kind of annoying, and I think some of them were written interesting since the last game. So Kratos is awesome. I like what they did with Atreus. he's becoming an interesting character. Mimir feels different than the last game, but I think he feels more supportive than he did in the last game. The last game, like, you find him and he becomes that, but in this, is like when at one point somebody says that they're like brothers. He says brother all the time, so everyone's like a brother to Mimir. But Kratos and Mimir have like a bond together that feels like inseparable. Every time someone takes Mimir away, I'm like, wait, you can't take Mimir.
Well,
He's
even
fucking part of this.
Atreus at the end of the game says he's like a second father.
Yeah.
So
And so I really like that dynamic of Atreus and his two dads, apparently. Really cool. Ingrid Boat I thought was a lot of fun. One thing I didn't mention. That scene with her grandma in the house where she's a giant was done so well. It was so insane looking visually. It was fun. It was really refreshing. It didn't feel like God of War.
Yeah.
I felt like I was playing It Takes Two or something. I was like, this is a Pixar movie. What is this? Like, what the fuck is this arc?
That was totally
it was a
bizarre.
wild boss fight.
It was weird. I was like, what the fuck? But it was like amazing the way they did it. I was like, that doesn't look like just a big character model. That looks like a fucking actually like a giant. Like, that looks like they did it so good. They did that really well with everything. Even Tyr, his movements were different than like other character models. So it's not like they just took Tyr and then made him a big character model. They like actually built a giant in the game, and then like, or not giant, but just like a fuck tall ass dude. And like his motions, his movement, the way he sat in chairs and stuff, like they really thought about this stuff. And so they handle size so well. Even the dog's movements, man, when he's just running around through tears, and everybody, they tell, Trace is like, oh, I let him free. And everybody's like, what the fuck did you do? everybody, Freya, he's got no friends. They're all like, what the fuck did you just do? Like, he's just going to keep going through tears and ripping shit up forever. Yeah. And then they're like, well, we got to go put him down, I guess. But I like how at one point Trace is like, oh, I'm going to tame him. And Chris is like, tame him. Like, what? Because he's just like, I don't know. And Chris is like, I only know how to do one fucking thing. And we're going to do that. We're going to kill this fucking thing.
Him.
Yeah. Well, and then
it almost worked.
Well, they kind of technically tame him because they put fucking Fenrir in there. But I thought it was funny how he's just like, oh, I'm just going to go in there and talk him down and shit. And Chris is like, what? what are you talking? This motherfucker's ripping through time and space, just destroying everything. Like, when you're running around, you just see him in the background running across, like going in between places and stuff. I'm like, this is a big deal.
Ripping shit up.
I thought everybody was being a little rude to Atreus at first. Like, they'll take care of it, and they do. But then you see him, I'm like, oh no, this is like not good. Why the fuck did he let him out?
Well, the fact that all those, the undead are just pouring even into the
yeah, it's fucked.
What is that? The world tree or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're even like one of them's like this is only the fucking beginning of the problems. Like, that they're just pouring in now. Like, there's a bunch of problems that are gonna fucking happen with this shit. So yeah, that was fun. But I don't remember how I got there. But characters, yeah. Angerbot is cool.
Because of the giants.
Animations, yeah. I never liked Tyr. I thought he was annoying. I kept calling him a cuck. I saw people on Twitter going like, oh, I love this guy. As soon as he started talking, I was just in love with him. He's such a cool character. I'm like, is he? He just walks around going, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't understand exploration. Just like whining constantly. And then at the end, he's just Odin. And I'm like, fuck that guy, dude. That guy never was cool. And I feel validated because I'm like, that was a spy the whole fucking time. That guy killed Brock. Fuck that guy. Which was a wild scene too. That whole scene's a clusterfuck. Like, as soon as Brock gets up and starts bitching him out, and I'm like, that's right, fucking tell that nerd. And then he stabs him. I'm like, oh, he fucking did him dirty, dude. Tyr's a piece of shit. And then he turns into Odin. I'm like, oh, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I just saw like Tyr was just like an asshole all of a sudden. Like, I was like, I never trusted that guy. That guy's got, I'm not going to say that, but he's got a certain vibe to him. But stabs him, turns into Odin, and then he's grabbing fucking Atreus, and everybody's like getting crazy and shit. He's like, give me the mask. And then he gives him the mask, fucking throws Atreus, and then he throws the fucking mask into the wall with the spear and shit. I'm like, there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. So yeah, so characters, yeah. Thor, I thought was really cool. He didn't play as big of a part as I thought he would, but he was a really good supporting character.
He had good conversations with Seth behind the doors if you'd lean and like listen to him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff. And I also love the scene Sif's his wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That scene where they're just doing what Odin's saying or whatever, and like we're supposed to support Atreus because he's the main character, one of the main characters. But they really do a really good job on showing like people in Asgard and like their perspective on it. And like she's like, dude, this guy fucking killed your kids. He's sleeping in their beds. Like all this shit's happening. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, she was bitching at first. I'm like, shut up. But then like she brings that point. I'm like, that is pretty insulting. Like, spit in my face, why don't you?
Yeah.
And finally, Thor's just like, without even saying anything, he just gets it. He's like, okay. And then he's like, I'm gonna fucking kill this kid. Like, I'm done playing this game. And that's kind of the beginning of like where it leads, where Odin ends up killing him. And I was like, that was like really subtle, that conversation where he was just like, my wife's fucking telling me this. It makes sense. Like, why the hell am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then he fucking
And
nopes the fuck out with that orb.
At that scene, Odin's talking to the two Valkyries, and those are the Valkyries you end up fighting, which I thought was cool. Because they showed up, and I was like, oh, it's them.
Yeah.
And then I just fucking kicked the shit out of them.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of wasted side characters, because even the new Valkyrie Queen becomes like a objective once you beat the game. I haven't gone and done that yet. You know
I haven't either. Do you end up fighting her, Chevy?
Yeah, oh yeah. And
I've seen people bitching about it.
anytime you fail like a red, and she's like, you know, stomping your fucking head in or something, when you get out of it, it's not because you get out of it. Freya comes up and starts like having like personal dialogue with her, like
Yeah, because they have a connection.
So she will like come over and like wrestle the Valkyrie off while screaming all this like past stuff they've got going on.
Interesting.
It's a pretty rough fight. Mostly because a lot of times you get that ring, you know, with the 3 colored rings or 2 colors or whatever, blue, red, and sometimes look green, sometimes look yellow. But we're gonna say yellow for the or yellow or green. I guess you said they look green for the most part for you.
I think they're green. Might be the TV. I don't know.
It could. I don't know. Because sometimes even in the game they'd look green or yellow. So maybe it has to do with the background at the time too. But anyways, those rings they kind of slowly come in, so you have time to react. Hers are like super quick. They're like, so
Yeah.
you have to react pretty fast. That's the only thing that really makes her hard. Other than that, her and like the last Berserker just have like large hit point pools, and so it's an endurance fight.
Yeah. But with that, like none of the characters are wasted. Like if they name somebody off, there's something about them that will come up later, which I like. I'm gonna try and speed this up because it's already getting late and you haven't even gone through your full impressions. But
I mean,
I'm sure you can just kind of piggyback off a lot of what we've already talked about. But I thought Thrud was a really annoying character. Thor's daughter. She also looks goofy, so like every time she was in the mix, I was just annoyed. The chick who's like gonna be a Valkyrie or whatever.
Thor's daughter.
Yeah, I was not a fan of her. I'll just put it lightly. I don't think there's anything interesting about her. I don't think she's charming. I don't think she has a good personality. I don't think she has any great dialogue. Yeah,
she looks like a dwarf.
Yeah,
I didn't understand her body.
Looked like she got hit by lightning.
She definitely has more of Thor's frame.
Yeah, for sure. But it's cool because I was looking at her face. I could see both her parents. I was like, this is a video game, and this looks like their daughter.
Yeah, and besides her hair being styled like it was from the 1980s,
yeah,
she had her mom's hair, though.
She would be right at home in Monster Hunter. She looked like a Monster Hunter character to me.
100%.
Yeah, she looked like she'd be out there hunting down fucking one of those things. But, yeah, not a big fan of her. I think some of Freya's dialogue got repetitive and kind of one note in the sense of like, you know, what she went through and what her ambitions are. I think once she lets go of that, she becomes more interesting as a character. So yeah, that was fine. Sindri and Brock were way better in this game than the last game, and they were awesome in the last game. So I'm just glad they got something added to them. I really liked Odin. I thought he was a really good villain. I kind of wanted to trust him sometimes. So he was effective in how manipulative he was. And I do think a lot of what he said was like true, his ambitions. And when he told Atreus, you can leave whenever you want, he wasn't even lying about that because he just wants him to help him figure out that fucking all knowledge fucking tear. So that was really interesting. Obviously, he's a piece of shit because he'll just kill his own son out of nowhere and treat him like shit and use people to get what he wants. But the performance was really good. Whoever played him, really good. Same thing with Thor. Thor was really good as well. But I guess that guy has been in like Breaking Bad and other things, so people know him from somewhere.
He was on Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, Sons of Anarchy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew. Yeah, people, as soon as he got announced, everybody's like, "Oh, it's blah 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 from blah blah blah." So yeah, he definitely worked there really well. Freya's brother, Freyr. I was gonna say Fryer. I don't feel like we got enough from him as a character. Like I didn't get to like him, so his sacrifice wasn't like that meaningful to me, and we didn't really get to see him in his element until the war, when he got the sword and was actually doing cool shit with it. I was like, oh, that's kind of badass. They can like fly around with that thing. He's like blocking shit with it like a shield.
I also think it's funny.
He's like an actual god.
Yeah, it was dope. But before that, he's just like this, like, he reminded me of like someone's like brother who's on drugs and needs a little bit of money today, and you're like, well, don't support his habit. Like, well, he's my brother, I gotta do it. Like, he just kind of always came, was like, hey, hey, and they get in trouble and you gotta go bail him out. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I also like how his sword, when they're having dialogue about it early on, you always hear, they talk about like Thor talking to his hammer and stuff like that, and he comes off kind of crazy because of it. Mm-hmm. And then like the sword has the same thing going on. Yeah. It also has like a lot of the same properties, like being able to fling himself with it to fly and stuff like that. So it's interesting seeing like a similar family of weapons and like this perspective everyone has of Thor, because he's like talking to his hammer and is kind of like, seems kind of crazy. And then Freyr's weapons like the exact same, and you got to experience that with Atreus when it was your guardian, because it was talking to you all the time. And so I think someone at some point goes, yeah, you don't want to be caught talking to your sword, people will think you're nuts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. I also, small detail, I love Thor's snap to bring his hammer. Like, he was just like when he finally was like, I'm sick of this, I'm sick of you and your son, and he's like, when you go to fight him, he just fucking like pulls his hammer and the fight just starts. I'm like, that was pretty cool. But it is cool because like, a lot of people know Thor from like Marvel movies, and they follow a lot of the same principles where his hammer can't be moved by other people and he uses it to fly and shit. In this, he does that. He'll throw the hammer and fly over to it and stuff like that. It's a cool dynamic. But because we are playing in a world of gods, Freyr also has a sword that does similar stuff, like you were saying. That's really neat to see. It's not just Thor's weapon that does stuff like that. And even Kratos could pull his fucking axe out of nowhere.
Well, the weapon, was made by the same people who made Thor's hammer.
Exactly. So it's like, it's neat that there's just weapons like that that people have. And one character I like that I think this is my... people aren't going to agree with me, Josh moment. I liked Heimdall, the dude who can read people's intentions. As soon as he showed up, I was like, this is kind of like a Jaime Lannister kind of character for me. And I liked Jaime Lannister as well. Especially early on, people were like, oh, I fucking hate this guy. I'm like, I like him. He's like honor bound. He's a piece of shit, but he also can back it up. I like when someone's a piece of shit and they're cocky, but they can also back up what they're talking about. They're not just like a weasel. They're like, they can fucking actually enforce what they're saying. And you could argue Heimdall like only can just tell what you're going to do, but he can. And so that makes him a formidable opponent. He's fucking kind of scary that you can't hit the guy. Mm-hmm. And the way he talks to people comes off like, oh, he's condescending. He's a know-it-all. He is. He like, no one surprises him with anything and shit. So I thought he was a really interesting character. I thought the fight with him, when you actually hit him and he's like, what the fuck? And then he starts just going crazy. And then you like go to like, let him live, and he hates that. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and like the fight just goes insane. I thought he's a really cool character. He deserved to die for sure, but I like a bad guy or a villain that I can like identify with a bit and go like, I understand where he's coming from, because he was like honor bound to Odin. He's doing everything Odin fucking told him to do. He didn't get along with Thor, but that added a dynamic to Asgard that was interesting. Yeah. Not everybody agreed on shit. And And when Atreus shows up and he's lying to him and he's like questioning him, first off, he's like, I'm not interested. I'm just going to kill you. That would have saved Asgard a bunch of fucking problems. Well, Odin. If he just chucked him off the cliff, that's what he's going to do. And then finally he like brings him up. And the whole time he's just testing him and reading his mind and shit. And he doesn't trust him. And that whole dialogue too, when Odin first shows up and he's like, he's here to betray you. And Odin's like, I know he is. And he's like, you're not going to kill me right now, are you? Like, he already knows what he's fucking coming to do.
Yeah.
But he's just like, hold on, we can get some stuff accomplished before that happens. Like, I thought the dialogue was like really good for that.
Yeah, he knows what's going on, but he doesn't really have like, because of his power, he's kind of like an in-the-moment guy. Versus like Odin's obviously more of a schemer and a manipulator.
Well, Odin can see the big picture because he's smart.
Right.
Whereas like Heimdall just has that info.
Yeah.
He's jacked into your data. He knows what you're thinking and shit, but he's not some big crazy mind.
Right,
He
so
just has
everything's
access.
impulsive, basically,
Exactly.
yeah.
But yeah, Odin doesn't need to have that ability to kind of still grasp on what the hell people would be doing.
Yeah.
So I thought that dialogue was really cool, and even that you picked up on that we can discuss that. They did it effectively. It's really that was good writing. I really liked that, and that's one of the reasons I like Heimdall.
The part where Thor is like, he's like getting up against Thor and starting to flip up shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then Thor's like, I will fucking murder you. And he goes, how are you going to do that? And Thor's like, look in my eyes and tell me what you see. And then Heimdall instantly just fucking kind of goes, and then just has some attitude, but backs down.
I would have loved to see that fight. Yeah, exactly. I'm curious. Maybe he can't read him. Maybe he's so fucking, maybe he's on a minimal level. He just has no idea what the hell he's thinking. I don't know.
Gets pissed drunk enough that it don't matter.
Yeah, maybe.
He's too dumb to fucking for Heimdall to.
Or like Chevy said, maybe he's just so wasted that it's like too hard to read. I don't know.
I mean, it's gonna be a weird example, but like the brain slugs in Futurama die when they try to eat Fry's brain because there's nothing going on in it.
Yeah, something similar like that. Like it was an interesting dialogue because like for most people, if they walked up to Thor and be like, "Oh, I'll fight you," like I would be like, "No, you're not." Like that motherfucker's gonna kill you. But this like little blonde guy comes up and he's like, he's not even like afraid of Thor at first. He's just like, and not even like a bratty way. He's just like, what the fuck are you gonna do to me? Like I already know what you're gonna do. But then something in that dialogue gets to the point where Heimdall's like, nah, this isn't worth it. I don't know what that would be for, but like, wish they explored that a little bit more. But yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting dynamic, and how like Thor. His relationships with everybody and shit too was really cool. So, but anyway, I've talked enough about characters. There's plenty of characters. There's a lot of really good ones, a lot of really good side ones, and then some with writing I thought was a little sloppy, but whatever. And I think that's about all I can think of when it comes to impressions. Unless you have something you say to kind of
inspire,
bring something out. But yeah, if you want to. We're already 2 hours into this, so yeah, if there's anything you want to add to it.
I'm not going to have a lot more to add because I've already been putting in my 2 cents.
I figured we would all just be able to chime in on this. So,
but I mean, yeah, I had a great time with this game. The same way I had the great time with last game. They do feel a little different, but it does feel like a sequel. So, and I do think because it is less a story about just Kratos and him trying to raise this son to survive, and more about the entirety of the realms. It is going to feel different. I don't think there's a lot of ways around that. I do think they've handled the storytelling really well. A lot of things that I made a lot of assumptions like going through because I'm just basing it off of what I know of, the character Loki, the character Thor, the character like all these things about these in lore, and they intentionally don't do those things, and I'm very happy about that. But they still have enough to still be that arc, that lore, that character,
yeah, they're playing around with that lore, but they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that. It's the same, and I made this example to you before, but like it's the same reason I like when Final Fantasy, they're a little more extreme in their what am I looking for when you take like when directors take source material and then add their own thing, they take liberties. Is that what it is with it?
Yeah.
Final Fantasy goes really extreme with their liberties with it, but it's still like is neat when they play around with that lore. It's the same idea here, except way more grounded. I I think the biggest parts that we didn't really talk about too much that I want to kind of touch on is all the flashbacks when Kratos goes to sleep of his relationship with his I guess his widow
Faye,
his ex-wife basically.
Yeah.
And
there's one. Sorry, there's one. You said something about the water, Kratos, in the canoe thing at some point earlier, and it reminded me of there's a scene, one of the flashbacks where he like helps Faye into the boat holding Atreus, and then he gets in the boat, and as soon as they get their ass even on sitting down on that fucking bench, he fucking uses the oars, goes boom, and just shoves them out into the water, and the whole boat rocks really hard, and then they move like 5 feet. And she's like, "Oh, those gentle waves are so nice." I'm like, "That motherfucker just gave that kid shaking baby syndrome, dude. Like that's why Atreus is kind of a little fucked up. It's because of that was essentially like a bus hit him, like how hard he pushed off from the shore." But yeah, the flashbacks were interesting.
yeah, I really liked it because like what kind of woman is gonna be able to put up with Kratos? The dude doesn't talk, he grunts, he just kills things. He doesn't have like a lot going on outside of just surviving and having a past of just murdering absolutely ridiculous, foes. And so you have, this woman who also in her own right is able to fight, as we find out a lot more when you go to the crater and you get all the lore bits in there about how she fought Thor there, and that lightning bolt is the same exact thing that happened as later when you fight Thor. And even in that fight when you're with fighting Thor, and that happens, he goes, "Oh, this feels familiar," and Kratos goes, "What?" And he's like, "It doesn't matter," and he doesn't expand upon it. It was because Faye and Thor fought out in Vanaheim before, and that exact same thing happened with these two godly weapons. So and that he didn't know that she had this side to her, that she lived before, where she was able to like be a competent fighter and have rage and stuff, because she seems very put together and calm, and like, but she's able to put up with him because she's had a similar type of I don't know what I'm looking for. She also had like a moment in her life where she was basically just running on rage and stuff. So plus just being able to get a face on like who,
getting to know that character, not just be like talked about, was nice. I think her message is good too. I think some of her lines are okay, but yeah, it is good that we got a face and a character, a personality to them, and to see her and Kratos together was interesting, even though a lot of it was just her going like, "You'd look better if you smiled more, you should talk more, blah blah blah," just like fucking. And the whole time Kratos just like,
well, I mean, she even flips some shit, like asks him a question, and before he even grunts, she's like, makes a grunt noise or whatever, because she knows everyone.
Well, she calls him grumbles at one point too.
Yeah, and it happens even with other characters in the game where they're just like expecting you to grunt, and then he actually says something like, "Oh, you had something to say." So
yeah, and I think the final scene with her and him was good, where she kind of like tells him, to open his heart and stuff like that, not to live in the past. We're not the past, all that kind of stuff, and it kind of reflects onto how he has that conversation with Atreus. That was a good scene.
What also adds to the Giants like being so like focused on fate, because she's like, "I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
I have to do this, stuff before that happens."
Yeah, she was in a death cult, man. She's like walking through the woods while he's holding a bucket of fucking paint. She's just painting all the trees and shit, and
yeah, putting up with that barrier that
getting
gets
ready
fucked
for
up in
this
the
shit.
first game. But yeah, so that was interesting. I liked getting that back story aspect. I like that in a lot of storytelling, anyways, where they go back and kind of like fill in some of the history in little bite sizes through the whole experience. I don't like when they spend a lot of time on it in one sitting.
Yeah. I think it was bite size. It was like perfect.
Yeah,
the way they did it.
And then connective tissue stuff, like I brought up with the Thor and Faye versus Thor and Kratos having the same outcome. The world snake getting the giant soul in it and becoming that world snake.
And Odin getting a fucking soul marble, and then Sindri just going, "Fuck this," and just breaks it.
I don't know about that being part of the connective tissue part, but
No, I was just thinking about the souls thing and how Sindri was just like, I'll make this decision. Anyway, sorry.
and then yeah, even like, you know, when Fenrir dies and like he accidentally casts that soul capture spell and puts him in his knife or whatever. There's just a lot of really smart connective
Little
tissue
things,
throughout
yeah.
the entire game, and even when you're doing like the side quests and stuff like that, you get all these parts that start connecting everything to this, like, you know, central, you know, event that's about to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just really smart. It definitely, I think, is a fun way to do storytelling, because you don't need it to get through the story and still enjoy the story, but I do think it enhances the story a whole lot.
Yeah.
And they do a good job with that. There are parts where it does drag on a little bit. I didn't mind the Agrabota part, like writing on the back thing, but I played the game super slow. It took me 53 hours to do the whole game. So
Yeah, and I beat it in 28
yeah,
hours.
I play slow anyways.
I saw some dude on Twitter fucking going like, God of War Ragnarok is the best 22 hours I put into a game. I'm like, how the fuck did you beat it in 22 hours? Did you not do any side quests?
Yeah.
You just ran through it, like, savor it a little bit.
I think straight campaign, it was like 21, 22 hours.
You beat it in that?
No.
Oh.
Hell no. I'm probably close to 26 or something hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a
But
lot
I
of that
did every single side quest and stuff given to me.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is I don't run a lot. I'll just like
Oh, dude.
actually walk places.
I'm running a marathon in that game.
Even like the first time you get the sled in the desert part, not the dog sled, but the later one with like the weird dog things. There was times where I was walking instead of using them, and
Jesus.
even Faye was not Faye. I've lost her name. Freya was like, you know, we can use the sled. I was like, no, I know. Like I'm walking
And they're
over the,
following you the
Yeah,
whole time.
I love that the dogs will actually follow you too, wherever
Yeah.
you're at. So you're never like looking for them or having to call them and shit. So they have to teleport there and
Yeah,
stuff.
so just to give perspective on like why it takes me a long time to get through a lot of these games is because I generally I don't like using vehicles a whole lot in games, and I don't run most of the time. I walk.
Yeah, I play that game. I play a lot of games like I'm fucking trying to get to the electronic department at fucking Walmart on Black Friday when everybody else is there. I'm shoving through
not
it.
this year, but yeah.
Well, back when that was a thing. But like, yeah, I'm just like going. And when I get in a fight, I gotta kill you guys as quick as I can. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And I start just running, and I'm like constantly flicking my stick all over the place, like looking for things. I'm like, oh, there's a thing. And I'm just going. You are more of a slower paced player.
Yeah.
Not in like a negative way, but like more methodical. You're looking over things and figuring things out. Taking in the lore that I'm not, apparently.
And then I love. We already talked about characters, so I'm not gonna go through too many individuals, but I think almost every character in this game was like completely enjoyable. Even if you didn't like them, that's a good feeling to have, because if you don't like them, they're doing their job.
Yeah.
There's only a couple characters I just didn't give a shit about at all. I do think Third, or whatever her name is, was like a whatever. Like I didn't feel one way or the other. She just existed. And then the same with the dwarf that inevitably replaces Brock, which I don't think anyone fucking can.
Who cares about her?
Fucking Ellie from Borderlands 2.
Yeah, I just did, like, every time she spoke.
Her face is doing weird shit. I was looking at her.
She's missing. One of her eyes is milky. So.
I just felt like there's a lot of independent movement going on in that face. I was like, people are different, but like, it's like, you're gonna replace Brock with that?
Yeah, well,
Salt
then
Power Eye.
she's
Dude,
still
yeah,
trying to
for
be
real.
funny, and I don't think replacing, Brock's humor with another humorous character was a smart move. I think she should have had a different type of personality.
Though I feel like she only existed because at that point where Sindri runs away and is on his fucking bad guy arc, doing bad things out by himself, somebody's got to do his job for you, and she was kind of there for that.
Except for when he first runs away, you can't access.
Yeah, but there's
Forge.
it's like pretty short after that. I was like, wait, how the fuck do I upgrade my gear? And then
After-
she's just hanging out. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, after things chill, he's still gone, obviously, because he's mourning. But, yeah, she becomes your blacksmith. But Yeah, there's a period there where even she's not available. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. How am I supposed to upgrade anything right now?
That guy wrote Kratos and Atreus off like fucking they were never a thing, dude. That guy was quick to be like, I let you in my house. And you fucked me over.
And obviously he's speaking out of like
grief.
A very emotional state.
I think Mimir makes a point of going like, during grief, you can't take what people say to heart.
Yeah. But he's literally like, you took all our shit, you took us, you lived in our house, like,
and now I'm like brotherless. That's what I got.
And what did I get? I lost my fucking brother.
Yeah.
And I thought that was
one of the like better scenes in the whole game.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
His speech.
I wasn't expecting that from that character.
Also, this dude who's been like super squirmy and like, don't touch me, I'm afraid of germs, all of a sudden just like looking pissed off and then coming back completely filthy and with blood on him and stuff like that. I was like, wow. Like,
speaking of squirmy characters, that fucking squirrel guy, Ratatosker, where the fuck his name is, that character model's insane.
Yeah.
Like when he was moving around Kratos stuff, I'm like, this isn't even a cartoony game.
Yeah.
That's just a straight up squirrel man, and it's so convincing. It's crazy.
Well, and then, yeah, so I was going to bring him up too because we didn't really talk about him, is that I really like his role as like basically the caretaker of the tree, but you get, as you have a few more conversations with him, you start learning like, to take care of all these things. He takes an emotion, takes it out, gives it form. It does tasks for him. But there's a tidbit he gives later because you ask like, so you're just emotionless, like, or they just can do whatever the hell they want? He's like, well, no, I have to take them back in every once in a while, and then just deal with that emotion, and then I can recreate it to do tasks again. I was like, that's fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
To have just like all this pent up, like in the case of like anger, that's just been going on forever and ever and ever, and you're not experiencing it at all, and then all of a sudden you just take that in, you have to process it in one sitting. Like, that's awful.
Yeah.
So. That was a fun little tidbit. I like
how he's like the fucking landlord of that tree. And like when you're like, what are those dragons down there? He's like, no, those aren't dragons. And he's like, those guys have been here for a long time. And then you kill Needhog and he's like, where is she?
Where'd the babies go? Yeah. They ran off.
He's just like, why would she not be here? Blah, blah, blah. And the whole time, like, you just killed her. I was like,
yeah, I was like, that when he learns about it,
no one says shit about it.
No one says anything, and then he learns about it anyways, and he doesn't like get mad. He's like, "Oh no, the situation was understandable, but the babies need to come back because they're fucking off now.
He's all
and they need to be chewing on the roots."
I just like even when he's asking, he's not like sympathizing. He's just like, "Why the hell is she not here?
Yeah,
like why would she leave them here?"
And then also, I sat there and just rang the bell over and over again. He'll have constant changing dialogue to the point where. At first he's like, yep, that's the bell. Good job. You rang it. It's like, oh, weird. This is very uncharacteristic of you to like, pretty noises and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, you're trying to get under my skin. And then finally the last one, he's like, quit ringing the bell. So
there's one point where I was talking to him. It was like the third or fourth time I came back and he's like, hey, come over here. And I like talked to him and he was in the middle of something. And I was like, I got shit to do. And I like start walking off towards the building or the house. And he's like, oh, I guess you're just going inside. And like he says in the background, as he's saying that, I hear Brock at the door going, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, I can't make anyone happy. This guy's pissed I'm just walking away from him, and Brock's pissed I never came back in the fucking house.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. There's a lot of detail in that kind of stuff too. And they did this in the first game as well, but like when you're traveling and then if you get off, like, hold that thought. Type of thing. And then you'll be writing later and they'll be like, hey, finish that story you were talking about. So
what are you on my godding?
Dude, when I was in the crater, there's like little bits where you got to ride the boat. And like, it's never a long time though. So I would just be like, I'd get in the boat and then Mimir's like, let me get back to the story of blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then he'd barely be able to get that line out. And then Kratos was like, another time. And then, like, I'd get back in the boat, and Mimir's like, let me get back to that story. And he just said the same line. He probably said it like 15 times. It's like to the point where I just stopped, and I was just waiting for him to tell the story.
When I was doing the wedding location for Freya in Vanaheim, on the way back, like, I stopped a couple places, and they'd be in the middle of the discussion. And as soon as I touched land, Mimir's like, oh, we could save this for another time. Or, like, when I went to go upgrade my gear, he's like, best not to talk about this right now. and like she's like mid sentence, and I get back in, she started over again, and I was like, dude, let's just get this fucking story like knocked out, because I'm getting sick of like, I'm gonna forget what you said originally. I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about now.
I would say it happened like maybe once or twice to me, and then at that point,
that was the only egregious time. I was like, holy shit! But I do like they do that.
Yeah,
I like that you can't just like miss that dialogue and be like, what the fuck were they talking about? Like it will
when it
continue
comes off a
it.
little more natural, like which I like. But I would just, as soon as they start talking, if I'd get to my destination, I would just wait for them to finish before I land. So that way I didn't have to deal with.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that way I didn't have to deal with. Not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know what else to add that has been really said. The one thing I will say is like in the post game, getting a second set of credits after attending the funeral for Brock was kind of an interesting way to handle the credits. Because at first I thought the credits were super short. I was like, you're walking down this hallway and there's like spots. Once you get to them, they appear. And if you just stand there, they'll just stay there. And as you walk, they fade, type of deal.
That whole thing was like seamless, the way they did the credits.
Yeah.
Because like the cinematics happening where you're talking with Frey or whatever, and then you're just standing there, and I'm like, what happens next? And I move the stick, I'm like, oh, I can play at that point. And then like when you're walking like through the place, the credits are rolling, which I thought looked really cool the way they did it. You told me that there was a second credits to do, and I would have done that anyway because I wanted to attend the funeral. But it's like there's a hard ending where like this is the end of the story, but if you want closure, do the funeral. Because there's other games and movies that don't handle the death of characters very well sometimes, and this game seems aware of that and like, no, we're gonna have like a whole scene for it.
Yeah.
So
I thought that was an interesting way to handle that. I do think people are going to be missing out. It's not their fault, or the game doesn't really incentivize you to do it. But there are some hidden locations that appear after you beat the game that add some little tidbits, like being able to go to the turtle when you have Freya with you finally, and she gets to have a conversation with the turtle about apologizing for leaving it there and stuff like that. And then also in Niflheim, the place with the crows, there's the Aesir prison.
Yeah, prison.
That's there all of a sudden. And if you do that, you find Tyr, like the actual Tyr.
Yeah, and it's like, he's like, who are you? And then you kind of tell him like Asgard's fallen and fucking Ragnarok happened, all sorts of shit. He's like, huh. And they're like, hey, let's get you food and shit. He's like, no, I got to think about that for a second. Like, he doesn't even know what the hell's happening.
Yeah, and then it gives the implication that Odin must have had this prison because for people he wanted to shapeshift into, and obviously they needed to be alive for that power to work, and so he just hid them in this prison in Niflheim.
Yeah, and he's using his version of Tyr as a way to essentially spy on them and shit. And like, you need the real Tyr to not be accessible, so he's like hidden off somewhere. Yeah,
so it was a really interesting bit that you have to find on your own.
And also closure for that, because I think I saw someone on Twitter complaining about how there was no closure about Tyr. Like, where the fuck's Tyr at?
Yeah, it's there.
And it's like, it's in the game.
They just don't point you at it. So,
for sure.
So they probably could do a little bit better job of that.
Yeah.
And then the Valkyrie fight. After you do all of the tournament stuff, you hear a noise, and then you go through this crack in the wall, you climb up, and then there's just like a little table and a book, and you go to pick the book up, and she shows up and starts fighting you. So, and then her and Freya basically having a conversation while you're fucking trying not to die. So pretty neat. A lot of little things at the post game. I totally recommend doing that.
I plan on doing it.
So
I just wanted to get credits rolled before we had this discussion.
And then I agree with the tonal change with the grandmother fight. That was neat and well done, like you said, but it was not the same game. So
it was weird.
It was very strange,
but it was still cool. Like, it's not even a complaint. It was just like was bizarre. Like, this is wild. What is this?
Yeah, it was a little. It was very tonally different from the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I guess we can jump into recommendations.
Okay.
I would.
1 second.
Oh, yeah,
quick
go ahead.
Gut check. quick gut check question. What's your favorite boss?
Favorite boss.
Man.
I'm thinking of like challenge versus like spectacle, because I think the spectacle ones are really cool. I thought the dual Valkyrie fight was pretty cool, just because of the setting and the kind of the circumstances that were happening. I thought Needhog was really interesting because of the fights with the portals and shit. The way that they were able to do that, I thought it was like a really visually cool fight. I also thought Garm was really fucking cool, just as a spectacle. And then, yeah, I kind of like the ones that had like emotion in them. So like when you fight Heimdall and Thor, those fights were cool just because there was like a lot of emotion behind them, where they're like freaking out and Thor's like all bloody and just yelling at you and shit. Like, finally, this is the fight, blah blah blah, like going crazy. So it's hard for me to pick, but probably those ones.
I mean, just from a gut check, I guess, standpoint, I'd probably have to say Garm.
Garm was cool, yeah.
And it's not even a hard fight, but it is the entire time you fight the multiple fights with him until it gets concluded. It's just basically a cinematic you're participating in.
Yeah.
And like you said, the way they handle him just moving around this zone, it was a blast, I think. So it's probably my favorite, I'd say.
It was just an experience I haven't really had in a fucking game, and it kind of reminded me of like the older God of Wars having these like crazy huge fights and shit. Like it's kind of a staple with the series, and the new iteration of it kind of stays true to that with like their scale of fights as well. So it felt appropriate.
Yeah, because the first one had the dragon. That was like intensely scaled.
Was there something about
First God
them
of
that's supposed to
War.
happen in this though?
There's 4 or 5 dragons you fight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where are they at?
I think they're in the crater area. I think all of them are.
Yeah.
Oh. Gotcha.
Yeah, I say I killed all of them. You get their armor, so.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're not all like traditional dragons. Some of them are more like drakes and worms and stuff. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your favorite fight?
I was gonna say probably
What boss?
Heimdall.
Yeah.
There's a lot that like
I
a
fucking
lot to
hated that
unpack
fight.
there.
Yeah.
And, like him like coming back again, and you're like, oh fuck, and then he comes back again, and you're like, Jesus Christ. But
There's also a lot building up
you
to it
know
too, because you have to develop a weapon to fight him. You have to make this fucking
Yeah.
spirit even make this fight possible, and then it kind of unfolds at first because he goes into the fight going like, "You're not gonna be able to beat me. How would you beat me?" And then like you like surprise me like, "Oh shit, hold on, like this isn't right."
You gotta fight his fucking mound. And you gotta fight him when he's not aware of you.
He doesn't
And you
give
have
a
to fight him
shit
when
about that
he
mount
is
either.
aware of you. Like,
Like when you first meet him and you're like hanging out with him and he sends all the guys to fight you when you're Atreus, just for fun. I just wanted to see if he'd say something. I shot at his animal because I walked near it and it hit me and knocked me back into the circle. And I was like, oh shit, they actually put that into the game. It's interesting. And so I shot at it and he's like, that's not very nice. Or he's like, you're not very nice to animals, are you? And like he like attacked me. And I was like, okay, like they've thought of a lot of things. That's cool. And yeah, then when you fight him, like real fight him, and you kill his mount, he's just like, ah, shit, like fucking, oh well, like, and just moves on with it.
But yeah, it was watching him slowly like unravel because he can't believe that there's this dude that he, overwhelmed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kratos trying his hardest to not murder him, but Heimdall not backing down
for sure.
was really emotional. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
so
what I
that
really
one.
dug about it.
yeah. So it's a good moment too, because like it's one of the first times where like everyone's aware of like what the prophecy basically is, and he's like, I have to make sure that doesn't happen, and then he's like forced to make it happen anyways. So makes you question whether or not he's screwed in the end or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other impressions?
No.
I think we can all agree it's probably one of the highest end examples of AAA development games.
Yes.
Developed games. I can't talk. I'm getting tired. I was just looking at them like, this is what AAA should be. Like, if you're going to make a AAA game, you got a lot of money, you got a lot of devs working on a project. This is where it should be at. Like, I'm not trying to pick on it, but like you look at a game like, Gotham Knights or something, and all the problems with that people are criticizing and stuff, and people like it, and more power to them. I'd like to try it at some point. It's also like a AAA developed game, so there's like a fucking huge wealth of difference in what AAA can bring to the table, and I think God of War is a really good example on how to do AAA and why Sony's revered for their story-based first-party titles. They're just on a level that's hard to touch. Between them and Naughty Dog, it's like insane.
Yeah, and even Forbidden West. I think Forbidden West.
Oh, 100%. That game got kind of forgotten, but yeah.
Super AAA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because Guerrilla likes to launch games next to other huge games.
Yeah. Yeah, Guerrilla's always had so much talent and so much ability to make great-looking games and great-playing games and stuff, but they've never been able to get, like, the same kind of foothold as other people. Because, like,
they're due.
Like, Killzone, a lot of people liked it. Super revolutionary game, or graphics-wise, when those came out. Horizon definitely has, fans, a lot of fans. I like it a lot, but not the people don't view it the same as some of the other Sony games. Ghost of Tsushima came out. Everyone loved it. Like, everyone loves Ghost of Tsushima. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah. That's
one game. So it's interesting how Horizon can't get its footing, but they do release it at weird times. So, yeah. So anyway, let's jump into recommendations. My recommendation is going to be simple. I think everyone should play this, unless you are super against the idea of playing a third-person action game. If that's not your cup of tea, or and there's a lot of accessibility stuff here too. I didn't dabble with any of it, but I was looking through it a little bit, and it seems like they have a lot of features to make the game work for really anyone's needs, or at least a lot of people's needs. So there's options there, but I do think it's an experience that that a lot of people could enjoy, and so loosely I'd recommend it to everybody. But more specifically, I guess if you're a fan of third-person action games, if you're into Greek mythology, Norse mythology, if you're into high fantasy, if you're into larger-than-life experiences and set pieces in gaming, things that really set the bar on what you can do in this medium, combo-heavy combat in games. If you're a fan of Dark Souls, I would recommend this game. It doesn't have the same challenge factor to it, but it does have challenging bosses for sure, and combat that you do need to be on your shit for. Which I appreciate. Yeah, I don't know what else to add.
I mean, you have to like story-centric games, because if you are the type of person, I've met a couple now like this, that can't handle when the game takes too long and you're not actually playing it anymore.
There are people, who won't play for that.
Yeah, they're not going to like it. So you have to be like okay with games like wanting to take its time and tell a story where you're just watching. It's not Jump King like or anything like that, where it's just a game. So
it's not Tetris.
Yeah, that'd be the only thing I'd add, though.
It's fair. Josh, you got anything to add?
No, just I just would recommend people play it, because it is truly like one of this generation's treasures so far.
You have to play 2018 first. You should not start with this game.
Yeah, it has a recap, but it's not doesn't serve justice to it, so I wouldn't do that.
No, and I actually did 2018 when I was injured, so.
Oh yeah, I forgot you played that later.
Yeah, I replayed it pretty recently. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're pretty fresh on that, because I watched the recap. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I remember like the major beats of it, but some of the minor stuff I kind of forgot.
Yeah, it kind of made me. I had to think about it a lot. Like if that, like poisoned, because like I was talking about how the exploration was kind of, pacing and stuff like that was kind of like, because I just got done with 2018 also. Yeah. So like maybe it was so fresh that I'm just like annoyed with it. But I honestly do think that my personal problems with the game are, not not influenced by 2018 at all.
Mhm.
So it's kind of the conclusion I came to. But I think
I
everybody should play this.
Yeah, I think your criticisms are completely fair, and I wouldn't trust you if you didn't have any. So, just like I had criticisms of it, so there is weak points to everything. So, but this game does have some things it does that very few other games that exist ever have achieved. So, you got to kind of find the pros and cons of it. Yeah. So yeah, definitely give it a try. Anybody who hasn't, if you're on the fence about it, even if you're slightly interested, play it. But you should play the original one, the 2018 one, first before you play this, because you'll be cheapening the experience if you do not fully go through that yourself. Even watch a YouTube video if you really need to, but like a full playthrough. But you need the whole thing, because there's a lot of, like Chevy's emphasized a lot through this conversation, there's a lot of minor things that happen on the side that fill the lore up, and a lot of connective tissue, a lot of things you can really appreciate if you are paying attention, that happened even in the first game, but also connect over to the second game. There's a whole world and ecosystem they've built with these games that definitely work together, and so they are definitely need to be played together. So yeah, anything else? Let's jump into grades then. Chevy, you go ahead and grade it.
I mean, I think it's an easy A for me. I'd go a little higher, but there were moments where I was kind of like thinking about the time I was putting into the game. Most of the time that wasn't happening. Most of the time I was pretty in it and just like having a blast. But there are a couple times where I was just like realizing that I was sitting there playing it.
Yeah.
And then there are some weird like tonal differences, like I said, with the grandma part. It's not a bad part, but it doesn't feel like the rest of the game.
I loved it, but
Yeah.
like I literally, when I was playing it, took a picture. I think I sent it to Josh or something. I was like, this feels like I'm playing a different game.
Yeah.
Dude. Like, this is wild.
And then other than that, I really don't have any major complaints. I don't platinum games.
Yeah.
So like I think it's like the second game in like the last like maybe 5 years I've fully completed. So
I don't platinum games
I
at all.
think that speaks a lot to it. So
Yeah, makes sense to me. Josh, what would you grade it?
Easy A. Again, I'd go higher, but I do have criticisms, and it's just I can't overlook them. So
Yeah.
easy A.
You're going-
I'd say high A. High A.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to echo you guys. I'm going to go with a really, really strong A. Some of the things it does deserves an A+. So much of it deserves an A+.
Yeah, for
Some
sure.
of the stuff, though, that I as I played it, just kind of nagged me a little bit. Just kind of made me think about it and go like, I wish that was a little better. Like, everything's so stellar in this game that some of the stuff in, like, the writing and other things, basic things, feels like it should be just a little better. The impactful stuff, the stuff that should resonate. That's the place you don't want to fuck it up too much. But gameplay wise, this game's fucking awesome. The graphics are insane. So good looking.
Everything's rewarding, and not just in the loot department. but
Everything's
in feel.
rewarding in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the story is larger than life, and the realization of all these mythical locations and characters is so smart, so well done. The experience is A+. The experience is A+. Just some of the writing, some of the tonal stuff, I just wanted more from it, and I didn't get it. So very strong A. It's a fantastic game. It's definitely deserves, if it wins Game of the Year, I'm not saying I would vote for this. If it gets Game of the Year, it fucking deserves it.
Yeah.
But with that, if Elden Ring gets Game of the Year, it fucking deserves it. I mean, these are two huge games. Real quick aside, every single game, this is the first year ever this has happened, every single fucking game on that Game of the Year list, I like them all. I think certain ones are going to win, but like, I was like, typically there's like a game or two, I'm like, why the fuck's that there? Or, oh yeah, that's going to win because this fan base or whatever. But like this year, I'm like, these are all great games. 2022 has been a really good year for like standout games, even though there's that lull during summer, but like, it's just crazy. So that being said, yeah, God of War is absolutely worthy of Game of the Year. It's a fantastic game. It stands above almost all games in its quality. And yeah, I really liked it. Any final thoughts?
I mean, it's gonna be a long wait for the next one, which is fine because the polish is definitely there and the care is there. I only ran into one visual issue the whole time I played the game, and it was so minor I don't even think it's replicatable. So it was just a physics thing.
I walked through a boat and then got scared, so I got a fucking grudge.
Yeah, look
for the rest of my life for that.
And I was doing one of those things where you just leap off of. It was high enough to Kratos just jump down, like a ledge.
Mm-hmm.
But the only bug I ran into is instead of jumping down, he did the thing where he hung from it with his blade of chaos.
Oh, gotcha.
And I sunk through the floor.
Oh, weird.
Oh, yeah. That's a pretty big one.
But like I got back up and then I couldn't replicate it. So it was just kind of like a one-off thing.
Yeah, mine was literally just a floating hammer. Like, there was a table with tools on it. The hammer was in the air, though. So
yeah, long story short, the game's pretty polished.
Yeah, but for how complicated it is, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's really important to throw out there. You're going to be able to find random shit in most games, but it was hard to find in this one, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Anything else? All right. Well, let us know in the comments, guys. What'd you think of God of War Ragnarok? Give me your thoughts. Go full spoiler in the comments because we did it here. Anyone who reads them, I warned them. And what'd you think of it? What would you grade it? Where do you think it stands in the God of War series, but specifically, against 2018's? What's your favorite boss? I'll echo Josh's question. And yeah, what was some of your favorite things? What were some things maybe you didn't like? Maybe you got some real criticisms of the game. Let me know. Let's have a conversation about that. And yeah, let me know everything you think about in the comments below when it comes to God of War Ragnarok. And that's going to do it for this episode of Game of the Month for November. As always, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to... oh, God, I'm distracted right now. Real quick, before I go through the spiel. Josh, you have a TikTok. You want to let people know what that is?
Yeah, it's called GenesisPoint. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I just put out a little in case you missed it. Just little tidbits that I find interesting in the video game realm of news. So if you just want something quick and easy, they're usually less than a minute long. You can come by and leave a comment, leave a like. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely check it out. Genesis Points. Points or point?
Point.
Genesis Point. Check it out. You guys know Josh. He's been around forever. So if you're a fan of this channel, check out his TikTok. Go follow him there. The news he's doing, straight up, just news. He's telling you what it is in a timely fashion, real clear. Gives you the details really fast, as TikTok needs. That's the name of the game on TikTok. Keep it short, and adds in a little bit of his thoughts on it. So definitely check it out. It's a good follow. But yeah, check out our streams and socials linked down below. Check out our Discord link down below. You can talk to us anytime, all the time. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms if you prefer to listen to us. And I have a TikTok as well. Check that out. And we have a Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel more than liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing, if you're brand new, I want to thank both of you guys, Chevy and Josh, for joining me for this conversation. It was a blast. We had a lot to say about it. I knew we would, but I didn't know we were going to go almost 3 hours. And yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate we all stuck to it and beat the game to be able to have this conversation. And thank you, everybody who watched this. And until the next episode, have a good one, guys, and take it easy.